Welcome, weary traveler, to Moonmine Temple. Tonight, you're about to discover something extraordinary. A hidden sanctuary that exists between sleeping and waking, where ancient Buddhist masters have gathered for over 1,000 years to share the most profound teachings ever recorded. This is the Midnight Monastery, a place that appears only to those whose souls are ready for deep transformation. In the next 3 hours, you'll journey through sacred halls, where 10 life-changing stories await you. Each tale has been carefully chosen to not only guide you into the most peaceful sleep of your life, but to plant seeds of wisdom that will continue growing long after you wake. These aren't ordinary bedtime stories. They're ancient keys that unlock your mind's natural ability to find profound peace, even in the midst of life's greatest challenges. As we begin this sacred journey together, allow your body to settle wherever you are. Whether you're lying in bed, resting on a couch, or finding comfort in your favorite chair, let yourself sink deeper with each breath. Feel the weight of your day beginning to lift. The deadlines, the worries, the endless mental chatter that fills your waking hours, all of it can rest now. You've found your way to a place beyond time, beyond the ordinary world of stress and urgency. Picture yourself walking along an ancient mountain path as twilight deepens into night. The air is cool and crisp, carrying the scent of pine needles and mountain flowers. Each step takes you further from the noise of modern life and closer to something timeless and sacred. The path beneath your feet has been worn smooth by countless seekers who have made this pilgrimage before you. You're not alone on this journey. You're joining a stream of souls who have sought the same peace, the same answers, the same deep rest that your heart yearns for. As you climb higher, the sounds of the world below fade away. No traffic, no notifications, no demands on your attention. Just the gentle whisper of wind through ancient trees and the soft crunch of leaves beneath your feet. With each step, your breathing naturally deepens. Your shoulders relax. The tension you've been carrying begins to melt away like snow in spring sunshine. Through the misty darkness ahead, a warm golden light begins to emerge. As you round the final bend in the mountain path, you see them, the gates of the Midnight Monastery. Carved from 1,000-year-old cedar, these massive doors rise before you like guardians of ancient wisdom. Intricate symbols are etched into the wood, characters from a sacred language that speaks directly to your soul without needing translation. Above the entrance, moonlight illuminates an inscription that makes your heart flutter with recognition. Those who enter here leave behind the weight of the world. Standing beside the gates is a figure in simple robes, their face serene and ageless. This is the monastery keeper, and though you've never met before, their smile feels like coming home after a long journey. Without words, they bow deeply and extend their hands toward you. In their palms rest a set of prayer beads unlike any you've ever seen. Each bead seems to contain a soft inner light, as if holding the concentrated wisdom of masters who found perfect peace in the depths of night. As your fingers close around these sacred beads, something remarkable happens. Every worry you've been carrying Every problem that seemed so urgent just hours ago begins to feel distant and dreamlike. The beads are warm in your hands, pulsing gently with a rhythm that matches your heartbeat. You understand without being told that these are not ordinary objects. They're tools for transformation, blessed by countless nights of meditation and prayer. Each bead you touch releases another layer of tension, another fragment of the armor you wear to protect yourself from the world's chaos. The monastery keeper gestures toward the open gates, and you step across the threshold into a realm that defies ordinary description. The courtyard of first silence stretches before you, its ancient stones polished smooth by centuries of mindful footsteps. A fountain sits at the center, its water so still, it creates a perfect mirror for the moon above. The surface reflects not just the moon's image, but somehow captures its very essence, that quality of gentle, unwavering presence that watches over the world with infinite compassion. Cherry blossom trees line the courtyard, their branches heavy with pale flowers that drift down like gentle snow. Each falling petal carries away a thought that no longer serves you. Worry about tomorrow's meeting. Regret about yesterday's conversation. The persistent voice that tells you you're not doing enough, not achieving enough, not being enough. Let each petal take these burdens and carry them away on the night breeze. As you walk slowly across the courtyard, your footsteps naturally fall into rhythm with your breathing. Step, breathe in. Step, breathe out. This simple act becomes a meditation, a prayer, a conversation between your body and this sacred space. The monastery seems to breathe with you, its ancient walls expanding and contracting in perfect harmony with your own life force. You realize that this place doesn't just exist in some distant mountain, it exists within you, waiting to be discovered whenever you're ready to leave the weight of the world behind. Near the fountain, a movement catches your eye. From the shadows between pillars emerges a figure of profound presence. This is the master of the midnight hour, and their very being radiates the peace you've been seeking your entire life. Their eyes hold the depth of moonlit lakes, reflecting wisdom gathered through countless nights of silent contemplation. When they speak, their voice seems to arise not from their throat, but from the earth itself, carrying the authority of mountains and the gentleness of flowing water. "Welcome, seeker," the master says, their words settling into your consciousness like seeds finding fertile soil. You have come not to gain something new, but to remember what you have never lost. Tonight, as you journey through these sacred halls, you will discover that the peace you seek has been with you all along, waiting patiently beneath the surface of your busy mind. The master extends their hand, and in their palm rests a question written on ancient parchment. This is your personal koan for tonight's journey, a sacred riddle that will work in the depths of your unconscious mind as you rest. If your deepest peace were a room in this monastery, the master asks, through which door would you enter it? Don't search for an answer with your thinking mind. Let the question settle into your bones, into your breath, into the spaces between your heartbeats. The answer will find you in ways your conscious mind cannot imagine. The master turns and begins walking toward the inner chambers of the monastery, "Come," they say, their voice now carrying the promise of wonders yet to be revealed. "Follow me to the Hall of Three Mirrors, where tonight's first teachings await." As we walk, notice how each step becomes lighter, how your breathing naturally deepens, how the monastery itself seems to breathe with you. The path leads through a corridor lined with flickering candles, their warm light dancing on walls adorned with sacred art. Images of ancient masters in deep meditation, of mountains shrouded in mist, of lotus flowers blooming in perfect stillness. Each image seems to come alive in the candlelight, reminding you that you're walking in the footsteps of countless beings who have found the peace you seek. Their presence feels tangible here, as if their accumulated wisdom has soaked into the very stones of this sacred place. Ahead, ornate doors carved with intricate mandalas swing open silently, revealing the Hall of Three Mirrors. The chamber beyond is vast yet intimate, its ceiling disappearing into shadows, while three enormous mirrors catch and reflect the soft light of hanging lanterns. The mirrors are positioned to create an infinite regression of reflections, each one showing a slightly different aspect of reality. In their depths, you catch glimpses not just of your physical form, but of the luminous awareness that perceives through your eyes. At the center of the hall stands an ancient reading desk, upon which rests a scroll of golden silk. The master approaches this sacred text with reverence, their movements deliberate and filled with ceremony. "Tonight," they say, beginning to unfurl the scroll, "you will receive three interconnected stories from the deepest archives of wisdom. Each tale builds upon the last, creating a tapestry of understanding that will weave itself into your dreams and transform your sleep into a journey of profound healing." As the scroll opens, characters of liquid gold seem to flow across its surface, shifting and dancing in the candlelight. The master's voice takes on a different quality now, becoming the voice of the storyteller, the keeper of ancient wisdom, the guide who will lead you through landscapes of the soul. The first story, they begin, emerges from the mists of time like the moon rising over still water. It speaks of a truth that every spiritual seeker must discover, that the teacher we seek in the outer world has been waiting patiently within us all along. Settle deeper now into whatever supports you. Let your body become heavy and relaxed, like a stone settling into the soft earth beside a peaceful stream. Your part in this journey is simply to listen, to receive, to allow these ancient teachings to flow through you, like moonlight flowing through clear water. The stories will do their work, whether your conscious mind follows every detail or drifts in and out of sleep. Trust the process, trust the wisdom, trust the natural intelligence of your body and mind to receive exactly what you need for perfect rest and renewal. The master's voice grows softer now, taking on the cadence of wind through mountain pines. In the mountains beyond this monastery, they begin, there lived a young seeker named Kava who had spent 3 years searching for her teacher. She had traveled from village to village, temple to temple, always hearing whispers of a master who could show her the way to perfect peace. Yet each time she arrived somewhere, she was told, "The master was here, but has moved on." And so begins your journey into the lake of reflected moons, where Kava's discovery will become your own, where the seeking mind finally finds what it has been looking for all along. One autumn evening, exhausted and discouraged, Carver came upon a perfectly still mountain lake. The moon had just risen, full and luminous, casting a silver path across the water's surface, like a bridge between earth and heaven. As she knelt by the shore to drink, cupping the cool water in her hands, she noticed something extraordinary that made her heart skip with wonder. Not one moon, but countless moons shimmered in the gentle ripples, dozens, perhaps hundreds of perfect silver circles dancing on the dark water. "How beautiful," she whispered, her voice barely disturbing the sacred silence. Unable to resist, she reached out to touch the nearest reflected moon with her fingertip. But the moment her finger broke the mirror-smooth surface, all the moons scattered into fragments of light, dancing chaotically across the water like startled fireflies. The perfect reflections dissolved into shimmering chaos, each ripple destroying the illusion she had found so captivating. Carver pulled her hand back quickly, feeling somehow that she had disturbed something sacred. As she watched in amazement, the water slowly settled, becoming still once more. Like magic, the moons reformed, first one, then many, each perfect and complete once again. The lake had forgiven her disturbance and restored its mirror-like beauty, as if nothing had happened. She sat back on her heels, mesmerized by this dance of appearance and disappearance, of breaking and healing. As she sat watching this eternal play of light and water, the soft sound of footsteps on moss made her turn. From the shadows between ancient pine trees emerged an old woman, moving with surprising grace despite her apparent age. Her hair was silver as moonbeams, flowing freely around shoulders, draped in simple cloth. But it was her eyes that captured Carver's attention. They held the same depth as the mountain lake, reflecting infinite wisdom gathered through countless nights of patient observation. The old woman settled beside Carver, with the natural ease of water finding its level. For several moments, they sat together in comfortable silence, both gazing out at the lake's magnificent display of reflected light. Finally, the woman spoke, her voice carrying the gentleness of wind through pine needles. "Seeking something, child?" Carver's heart opened like a flower to this simple question. "I have been searching for my teacher for 3 years now," she replied, surprised by how easily the words flowed. "I follow rumors and whispers from village to village, temple to temple, but I always arrive too late. Sometimes I wonder if this master even exists, or if I'm chasing shadows and dreams." Her voice carried the weariness of endless seeking, the frustration of a heart that had hoped and been disappointed so many times. The old woman smiled, and in that smile Carver glimpsed something indefinable, not pity for her searching, but a kind of gentle knowing. "Tell me, dear one," the woman said, gesturing toward the shimmering water, "how many moons do you see reflected in the lake?" Carver looked out at the water's surface, counting the dancing lights. "Many," she said after a moment. "Dozens, perhaps hundreds, reflected in the ripples. Each one seems perfect and complete, yet they're constantly shifting and changing." "And how many moons are there truly?" the old woman asked, her voice carrying the patience of mountains. One, of course, Kava replied without hesitation. Only one moon in the sky, creating all these reflections. The old woman nodded slowly. Ah, and which moon is the real one? The one in the sky, or the countless ones dancing in the water? Kava considered this carefully, sensing that something important hung in the balance of her answer. The moon in the sky is real, she said finally. The reflections are just images, aren't they? Beautiful, but not substantial. They exist only because of the true moon above. Are they indeed mere images? The old woman asked, and her question carried layers of meaning that rippled through Kava's consciousness. Without waiting for an answer, she picked up a smooth stone and tossed it gently into the center of the lake. The reflected moon scattered again, breaking into countless dancing lights that seemed to celebrate their own impermanence before slowly reforming into perfect circles. The moon in the sky gives light to the world above, the old woman continued, her voice taking on the quality of ancient teaching. But it is the reflected moons that give light to the depths below. Without the water's surface to catch its radiance, the lake would remain dark. The sky moon needs the water moons to illuminate what lies beneath the surface. Her words settled into Kava's awareness like stones sinking into still water, creating ripples of understanding that spread outward in ever-widening circles. Something was stirring in Kava's mind, a recognition that felt like waking from a long dream. "Are you saying," she began slowly, her voice filled with dawning wonder, "that my teacher—" "Your teacher," the old woman said softly, her words carrying the gentle authority of absolute truth, "has never moved. Your teacher is like the moon, always present, always available, always offering light to those who know how to receive it. But you have been chasing reflections, searching for the moon in the water, instead of looking up to see what was always there." Kava felt her heart crack open, not with pain but with a relief so profound it brought tears to her eyes. "But where is my teacher then?" she whispered, though part of her already knew the answer. The old woman reached into the lake and cupped some water in her weathered palms. The moonlight pooled there, creating a perfect silver circle that seemed to hold all the wisdom of the night sky. "Your teacher is the awareness that can see both the sky moon and the water moons," she said, her voice now carrying the resonance of ancient bells. "Your teacher is the stillness that allows all reflections to appear. Your teacher is the vast space of consciousness in which seeking and finding both arise." She let the water fall back into the lake, each drop carrying light as it merged with the whole. "The teacher you seek is the seeker who seeks," she whispered. "When you stop chasing reflections of wisdom and recognize the awareness that can perceive wisdom itself, you discover that student and teacher were never separate. They are like the moon and its reflection, one light, appearing in two ways." Kava sat in stunned silence as understanding dawned in her heart like moonrise over still water. She looked at the old woman, then at the lake, then at her own reflection, shimmering on the water's surface. For the first time in 3 years of searching, she saw them all as expressions of the same luminous awareness, the awareness that was looking through her eyes, listening through her ears, understanding through her mind. The seeker and the sought had always been one. "Who are you?" she asked softly, though she suspected the answer would dissolve another boundary in her understanding. The old woman smiled, and as she did, she began to fade like morning mist touched by sunlight. "I am what you are, when you stop looking for what you are," came the whispered reply, carried on wind that rustled through pine needles. "I am the wisdom that appears when the student is ready to see that they have always been their own teacher." When Carver looked again, she was alone by the lake. But for the first time in her life, alone did not mean lonely. She had found what was never lost, recognized what was never absent. In the reflection of her own face in the water, she saw the teacher she had been chasing for 3 years, the awakened awareness that had been present in every moment of seeking, the luminous consciousness that had never stopped shining even when she thought she was walking in darkness. The moon above and the moon below were one moon. The teacher and the student were one awareness. The seeking had always been the finding, and the finding had always been the seeking. Like waves that never leave the ocean, she had never been separate from what she sought. As this first teaching from the scroll of midnight wisdom settles into your consciousness, dear traveler, notice how Carver's discovery continues to work within you, even now. Here in the Hall of Three Mirrors, surrounded by infinite reflections of your own luminous nature, consider this question that bridges her story to your life. What have you been seeking outside yourself that has been present within you all along? Perhaps it's the peace you hope to find when your circumstances finally align perfectly, or the love you believe will come from finding the right person. Maybe it's the confidence you think you'll gain when you achieve certain goals. Like Carver chasing reflected moons, we often seek in the external world what can only be found in the vast awareness that is your true nature. Let the wisdom of this teaching settle into your being like moonlight, sinking into still water. Feel how your own seeking, whether for peace, for answers, for healing, for purpose, might be like chasing reflected moons, when the true source of illumination rests in your own awakened awareness. You are both the seeker and the sought, the question and the answer, the wave and the ocean. The master now approaches the scroll once more, their movements deliberate and reverent. The first mirror has shown you the teacher within, they say, their voice carrying new depths of meaning. Now we turn to the second reflection, where you will discover that true wealth has nothing to do with what you possess, and everything to do with your capacity to appreciate what is already here. As golden characters begin to flow across the sacred scroll once more, prepare to journey with a merchant who owned everything yet felt empty until he discovered the treasure that can never be stolen. In the bustling trading city of Samarkand, where caravans from distant lands converged like rivers flowing into the sea, lived a merchant named Bahram, whose wealth was legendary throughout the known world. His warehouses overflowed with silk from China, spices from India, precious stones from the mountains of Afghanistan, and gold from the mines of Africa. Servants attended his every need. His palaces rivaled those of kings, and his name was spoken with reverence in markets from Baghdad to Constantinople. Yet for all his magnificent possessions, Bahram carried within his chest a hollow ache that no amount of treasure could fill. Each morning, he would walk through his vast collections, running his fingers over priceless artifacts and counting his growing fortune. But instead of satisfaction, he felt only the gnawing hunger for more. More gold, more influence, more recognition, more security for an uncertain future. His nights were filled with worry about protecting what he had gained and strategizing how to acquire what he had not yet possessed. Sleep came fitfully, interrupted by dreams of thieves and calculations of profit margins, leaving him exhausted despite his luxurious chambers. One day, while inspecting a new shipment of rare pearls, Bahram encountered a man unlike any who had ever entered his marketplace. The stranger wore simple robes that had seen many miles of travel, carried no possessions save a worn wooden bowl, and yet radiated a contentment so profound it seemed to illuminate the air around him. His eyes sparkled with an inner light that made Bahram's most precious jewels appear dim by comparison. When the man smiled, which he did often, and for no apparent reason, it was as if he possessed all the happiness in the world. Curious and somewhat envious of this mysterious contentment, Bahram approached the traveler. "Good sir," he said, "I couldn't help but notice your remarkable cheerfulness. You appear to be a man of modest means, yet you seem happier than I, who own more wealth than most men see in a lifetime. Tell me, what is the source of your joy?" The traveler, who called himself Sufi Darvish, laughed with the sound of wind chimes dancing in a gentle breeze. "Ah, friend Bahram," he said, somehow knowing the merchant's name without introduction, "you ask about the source of my joy, as if it were hidden in some distant treasury. But joy is not something one possesses. It is something one becomes when the heart learns to appreciate what is already present." Bahram frowned, accustomed to concrete answers about tangible things. But surely a man needs security, comfort, the ability to provide for himself and his family. How can one be truly happy without sufficient resources to weather life's storms? "Come," said the Darvish, extending his hand toward the merchant. "Let me show you something that might illuminate this mystery. There is a place I know, not far from here, where the true nature of wealth reveals itself to those with eyes to see." Intrigued despite himself, Bahram closed his shops early and followed the humble traveler out of the city. They walked through olive groves and across rolling hills dotted with wildflowers, the Darvish pausing frequently to marvel at simple wonders, the way sunlight filtered through leaves, the song of a nightingale, the scent of jasmine on the evening air. Each time he stopped to appreciate these commonplace miracles, his face lit up with genuine delight, as if he had discovered treasure beyond measure. As they climbed higher into the mountains, Bahram found himself breathing more deeply than he had in years. Away from his ledgers and inventories, his mind began to quiet. The constant mental chatter about profits and losses faded into the background, replaced by an awareness of the natural beauty surrounding them. For the first time in decades, he noticed how the setting sun painted the sky in colors more magnificent than any tapestry in his collection. They reached their destination as twilight deepened into night, a simple cave hidden among rocks, with a small fire crackling at its entrance. The dervish invited Bahram to sit on a flat stone while he prepared tea using water from a nearby spring. As they shared this humble meal of bread, dates, and tea, something unexpected happened. The simple food tasted better than the elaborate feasts Bahram's personal chefs prepared each evening. The warmth of the fire felt more comforting than his silk-draped hearths. The star-filled sky seemed more beautiful than any ceiling frescoed by master artists. "Tell me, friend," the dervish said as they gazed up at the infinite tapestry of stars, "what do you see when you look at this night sky?" Bahram followed the dervish's gaze upward. "I see countless stars," he said slowly. "More than I could ever count in a lifetime. And they're all shining freely, asking nothing in return, giving their light to whoever looks up." "And who owns these stars?" the dervish asked gently. "No one owns them," Bahram replied. "They belong to everyone and no one. They're freely available to any person who takes the time to look up and appreciate their beauty." The dervish smiled and reached into his simple robe, withdrawing a small object that caught the firelight. It was an ordinary stone, smooth and grey, the kind one might find along any riverbank. "This," he said, holding it up between them, "is my most precious treasure." Bahram looked confused. "But it's just a common stone. It has no monetary value, no practical use. How can it be treasure?" "Ah," said the dervish, his eyes twinkling with inner light, "but this stone has given me more wealth than all your gold combined. Watch." He held the stone up to catch the flickering firelight, and suddenly it seemed transformed. In its smooth surface, Bahram could see reflections of the fire, the stars, even his own wondering face. "This stone has taught me that true treasure is not what we grasp, but what we appreciate. It has shown me that wealth is not about accumulation, but about recognition." The dervish continued, his voice taking on the cadence of ancient wisdom. "Every morning, this stone reminds me to see the extraordinary within the ordinary. Every evening, it teaches me that I am surrounded by countless gifts that require no purchase, no protection, no insurance against loss. The warmth of sun on my face, the taste of clean water, the joy of a friend's laughter, the peace of a quiet moment, these treasures are freely given to all who learn to receive them." As the dervish spoke, Bahram felt something shifting deep within his understanding. He thought of his vast warehouses filled with objects he rarely looked at anymore, his multiple homes he seldom had time to enjoy, his countless possessions that required constant maintenance and protection. "But surely," he protested weakly, "material security has value. Without resources, how can one be free to appreciate these simple pleasures?" "Indeed, basic needs must be met," the dervish agreed. "But tell me honestly, when did you have enough? At what point did the acquisition of more begin to steal your ability to enjoy what you already possessed? When did protecting your treasure become more demanding than appreciating it?" These questions hit Bahram like arrows finding their mark. he realized that he couldn't remember the last time he had truly enjoyed any of his possessions. His beautiful gardens went unwalked while he counted coins. His magnificent library remained unread while he negotiated deals. His sumptuous meals were consumed hastily while reviewing ledgers. In gaining the whole world, he had somehow lost his capacity to be nourished by it. The treasure that can never be stolen, the dervish said softly, is the ability to find richness in whatever circumstances life presents. It's the recognition that every moment offers gifts that no amount of gold can purchase. This breath, this heartbeat, this awareness that can perceive beauty and meaning, these are the only possessions that truly belong to us, and they're infinitely renewable. As if to demonstrate this teaching, the dervish set down his simple stone and spread his arms wide toward the star-filled sky. Look around you, my wealthy friend. Right now, in this moment, you are surrounded by treasure beyond calculation. The air you breathe costs nothing, yet without it, all your gold would be worthless. The ground that supports you asks no payment, yet it holds you more securely than any fortress. The stars above shine for you as brilliantly as they shine for any king, requiring no tribute except your attention. Bahram found himself weeping, though he could not say whether from sorrow for the years he had spent missing these treasures, or from joy at finally recognizing them. For the first time since childhood, he felt genuinely rich, not because of what he owned, but because of what he could appreciate. The dervish's simple stone caught his eye again, and now he understood its true value. It was a reminder, a teacher, a key that unlocked the treasure house of present moment awareness. "Can you teach me," Bahram asked humbly, "how to carry this invisible treasure back into my daily life? How can I remember this feeling when I return to my shops and warehouses?" The dervish reached down and picked up another stone from the ground beside the fire. "Take this," he said, placing it in Bahram's palm. "Let it remind you that wealth is not measured by what you accumulate, but by what you appreciate. Carry it always, and whenever you touch it, remember this night when you discovered that you had been rich all along." As dawn approached, painting the eastern sky with colors that no painter could capture, the dervish prepared to continue his journey. Bahram wanted to offer him gold, jewels, anything of value, but the wise traveler smiled and shook his head. "I have received from you the greatest treasure of all," he said. "I have witnessed the moment when a soul awakens to its own richness. No payment could equal the joy of sharing in that transformation." And with that, the dervish walked away into the morning light, leaving Bahram alone with his simple stone and a completely transformed understanding of what it means to be wealthy. When the merchant returned to his city, his warehouses remained full and his gold still glittered, but he saw them all with new eyes. They were no longer sources of security or happiness, but simply tools that could serve others when used wisely. His true treasure, his capacity for appreciation, gratitude, and present moment awareness, traveled with him everywhere, requiring no protection, because it could never be lost. From that day forward, Bahram's business dealings became acts of service rather than accumulation. His wealth flowed like water, nourishing everyone it touched, because he had discovered that the more appreciation you give away, the richer you become. The stone remained in his pocket always, a smooth reminder of the night he learned to see treasure hiding in plain sight. Here in the Hall of Three Mirrors, as this second teaching settles into your awareness, notice how Bahram's discovery might illuminate your own relationship with wealth and contentment. What invisible treasures surround you right now that require no purchase, no protection, no fear of loss? Perhaps it's the softness of whatever supports your body as you rest, the miracle of your breath, flowing in and out without effort or thought, the extraordinary gift of consciousness itself, this awareness that can perceive, understand, and appreciate. Like stars freely shining in the night sky, these treasures are abundant beyond measure and available to anyone who learns to recognize them. Let this teaching work in your being, like seeds planted in fertile soil. Feel how the desperate reaching for more might relax into grateful receiving of what is already here. Notice how the fear of not having enough might transform into the recognition that you are surrounded by abundance in forms that cannot be counted in any ledger. The Master's hands move across the scroll once more, revealing the third and final reflection in this hall of mirrors. Now, they say, their voice carrying the promise of deeper wisdom yet to come, you will witness how life's greatest disappointments often become doorways to its most profound gifts. In this next story, a master builder discovers that what appears to be failure may actually be the universe's way of creating something far more beautiful than anything we could plan. Golden letters begin to dance across the sacred parchment as the tale of the broken bridge unfolds, ready to teach you about the hidden wisdom in life's unexpected changes. In the mountain valleys of ancient Tibet, where rivers carved their way through landscapes of breathtaking beauty, lived a master bridge builder named Tenzin, whose skill was legendary throughout the Himalayan kingdoms. For 40 years, he had designed and constructed bridges that defied the imagination, graceful spans that seemed to float between mountain peaks, engineering marvels that allowed travelers to cross the most treacherous gorges with complete safety. His bridges were not merely functional structures, but works of art that enhanced the natural beauty of their surroundings. Kings and merchants traveled great distances to commission his work, knowing that a bridge built by Tenzin would stand for centuries. As Tenzin aged, he conceived of one final project that would represent the culmination of his life's work. Across the deepest gorge in the region, where two sacred peaks faced each other like ancient guardians, he would build his masterpiece, a bridge so magnificent that it would be remembered long after his death. For 3 years, he poured his heart, his savings, and his remaining strength into this ultimate creation. Every stone was chosen with meditation, every beam carved with reverence, every joint fitted with the precision of a master craftsman approaching perfection. The bridge that emerged from Tenzin's devotion was indeed breathtaking. Arched like a rainbow between the towering peaks, decorated with intricate carvings that told the story of his region's spiritual heritage, it seemed to bridge not just physical space, but earth and heaven themselves. Travelers who crossed it wept at its beauty. Monks came to meditate in its presence, Artists attempted to capture its essence in paintings that always fell short of the reality. Tenzin had achieved his dream of creating something truly eternal, a testament to human skill, guided by deep reverence for the natural world. On the day of the bridge's completion, as the first official travelers prepared to cross this wonder of engineering and artistry, Tenzin stood at its center, with tears of fulfillment flowing down his weathered cheeks. He had invested everything, his reputation, his resources, his very identity, into this moment. This bridge would be his legacy, his gift to future generations, his proof that a single human life could create something of lasting beauty and value. But the Himalayan weather, indifferent to human dreams and accomplishments, had other plans. That very night, as Tenzin slept peacefully for the first time in 3 years, storm clouds gathered with supernatural intensity. Rain fell not in drops but in torrents, as if the sky had opened to pour out all the water it had ever held. Rivers swelled beyond their banks, transforming from gentle streams into raging monsters that devoured everything in their path. By dawn, the flood had swept away Tenzin's perfect bridge, as if it had been made of straw. When Tenzin arrived at the gorge the next morning, he found only broken stones scattered along the riverbank and twisted metal embedded in distant trees. 3 years of work, a lifetime of savings, and his proudest achievement had vanished in a single night. The old master fell to his knees among the debris, his anguished cries echoing off the mountain walls like the sound of a soul breaking. For days, Tenzin remained by the destroyed bridge, refusing food and comfort, raging at the heavens that had shown such cruelty. "Why?" he demanded of the indifferent peaks. "Why did you let me complete it only to destroy it immediately? What was the purpose of all that effort, all that beauty, if it was destined to last only a single day?" His words carried the full weight of a man whose life's meaning had been swept away by forces beyond his control. On the 3rd day of his vigil among the ruins, as Tenzin sat staring at the rushing water that had claimed his masterpiece, a young monk approached from the mountain path. This was Lobsang, known throughout the region for his gentle wisdom and deep understanding of the ways that suffering can become a teacher. He settled quietly beside the grieving builder, saying nothing, simply sharing the weight of the old man's sorrow. After a long silence, Lobsang spoke. "Master Tenzin," he said softly, "I have heard of your terrible loss. But I have also heard something else, stories of travelers who crossed your bridge in its single day of life. Would you like to know what they told me?" Tenzin looked up with eyes red from weeping. What stories could matter now? The bridge is gone. All that work, all that beauty, destroyed. They said, Lobsang continued gently, that crossing your bridge changed them. A merchant who had been consumed by greed found himself moved to tears by its beauty and decided to dedicate his remaining years to serving others. A young couple on the verge of divorce discovered that the bridge's magnificence reminded them of what they had built together and chose to rebuild their marriage. An old woman who had lost her faith in human goodness saw in your creation proof that beauty and dedication still existed in the world. The monk paused, letting these words settle like seeds in fertile soil. But perhaps most importantly, he said, your bridge taught me something that a permanent structure never could have. It showed me that true beauty lies not in lasting forever, but in giving completely of itself while it exists. Like a flower that blooms magnificently for just a few days, your bridge achieved something that eternity could not improve upon: perfect presence in the moment of its being. Tenzin felt something shifting in his understanding, like ice beginning to crack under spring sunshine. But all that effort, he whispered. 3 years of my life, all my resources, my dream of leaving something permanent behind. Was the effort wasted? Lobsang asked gently. Look at your hands, Master Builder. Look at the skills you refined, the problems you solved, the moments of pure creation you experienced while building. Was the joy you felt seeing travelers' faces light up as they crossed your bridge dependent on the bridge lasting forever? Did the beauty you created exist any less fully because it was temporary? As Lobsang spoke, Tenzin began to see his experience with new eyes. The 3 years of building had been filled with moments of deep satisfaction, creative breakthrough, and pure absorption in meaningful work. The day of completion had brought him a joy so complete that even this devastating loss could not erase its memory. The brief time travelers had spent crossing his bridge had created ripples of transformation that would last far longer than any physical structure. Perhaps, the monk continued, the flood was not your enemy, but your teacher. Perhaps it came to show you that the true bridge you built was not made of stone and metal, but of the love, skill, and dedication you poured into your work. That bridge, the bridge of your awakened creativity and service, can never be destroyed by any storm. Months later, as the seasons turned and the river returned to its gentle flow, something remarkable began to happen at the site where Tenzin's bridge had stood. The flood had carved new channels in the rock, creating a series of natural stepping stones across the water. Where the artificial bridge had required great engineering skill to cross the treacherous gorge, nature had now provided a way that was not only safe, but enchantingly beautiful. Travelers found that crossing these natural stones became a meditation, each step requiring presence and attention that the easier bridge route had not demanded. Local people began to say that the spirits of the mountain had used Tenzin's bridge as a template, absorbing its essence of connection and beauty, before reshaping the landscape according to a design more perfect than any human mind could conceive. The brief existence of the artificial bridge had somehow taught the river itself how to create a permanent crossing that enhanced rather than dominated the natural beauty of the gorge. When Tenzin first saw these natural stepping stones, he understood with crystal clarity what the young monk had been trying to teach him. His bridge had not been destroyed, it had been transformed. Its physical form had returned to the elements, but its essence, the intention to connect, to serve, to create beauty, had taken root in the landscape itself. He had built something far more lasting than stone and metal. He had built it out of love and dedication, and those materials are truly eternal. From that day forward, Tenzin's approach to his craft changed completely. He still built bridges, but he no longer attached his happiness to their permanence. Each project became a meditation on impermanence, a celebration of the creative process itself, rather than a desperate attempt to defeat time. His later bridges were even more beautiful than his early work, infused with a lightness and freedom that came from releasing the need for his creations to last forever. Paradoxically, by letting go of his attachment to permanence, he created works that touched people's hearts so deeply that their memory became truly imperishable. The old master builder spent his final years teaching young architects not just the technical skills of construction, but the spiritual principles that make any work truly meaningful. Build with complete dedication, he would tell them, but hold your creations lightly. Pour your heart into every detail, but remember that the true bridge you are building connects not just physical places, but the human spirit to its own capacity for beauty and service. That bridge can never be swept away by any flood. As this third teaching from the Hall of Three Mirrors completes its work within your consciousness, feel how Tenzin's discovery might illuminate your own relationship with the projects, plans, and dreams that life sometimes seems to wash away. What bridges in your own life have been swept away by unexpected floods of change? Perhaps it was a career you invested years building that ended suddenly. A relationship you thought would last forever that took an unexpected turn. A dream that seemed within reach until circumstances shifted beyond your control. Like Tenzin's bridge, these apparent losses may have served purposes that only become visible with time and wisdom. Let this story work in the depths of your being, like a gentle current, reshaping the landscape of your understanding. Feel how the grief over what was lost might transform into gratitude for what was experienced. Notice how the attachment to outcomes might soften into appreciation for the process itself. Allow the recognition to dawn that the love, effort, and growth you experienced while building your dreams can never be taken away, regardless of what external forms may change. The master now rolls up the sacred scroll, the golden characters fading like stars at dawn. The Hall of Three Mirrors has completed its teaching. They announce, their voice resonating with satisfaction and deep peace. You have seen yourself reflected as the teacher you seek, the wealth you possess, and the creator whose true works transcend all impermanence. These three mirrors have shown you aspects of your own luminous nature that remain constant, even as life circumstances flow and change like rivers carved by time. The great chamber fills with the gentle sound of temple bells, calling you deeper into the monastery's heart, where even more profound teachings await. Come, the master says, rising gracefully from the reading desk. Let us walk together to the tea ceremony of integration, where these three wisdom teachings will blend into one unified understanding, preparing you for the deeper mysteries that await in the garden of dissolved boundaries. You follow the master through corridors, where candlelight dances on walls adorned with ancient mandalas, each intricate design seeming to pulse with life in the flickering illumination. The sound of your footsteps mingles with the distant whisper of wind through bamboo, creating a rhythm that matches your increasingly peaceful heartbeat. As you walk, you can feel the three stories settling into your consciousness like seeds finding perfect soil, their wisdom already beginning to sprout in the fertile darkness of your relaxing mind. The tea chamber appears before you like a hidden jewel within the monastery's heart. Smaller and more intimate than the Hall of Three Mirrors, This circular room feels like being inside a lotus blossom. Soft cushions arranged around a low table invite rest and contemplation. Steam rises from a simple clay pot sitting atop glowing coals, filling the air with the delicate fragrance of jasmine and mountain herbs. The master gestures for you to settle comfortably as they begin the ancient ritual of tea preparation. Every movement of the ceremony unfolds with meditative precision. Water poured from a precise height to awaken the tea leaves. Cups warmed with careful attention to temperature. Each gesture performed with the same reverence that Tenzin brought to his bridge building, the same appreciation that Bahram learned from the dervish's simple stone, the same presence that allowed Kava to recognize her inner teacher. In this quiet ritual, you witness how the three mirror teachings flow together into one seamless understanding. Tea, the master says softly as they pour the golden liquid into delicate porcelain cups, is the perfect teacher of integration. Like wisdom, it cannot be rushed or forced. It requires the right temperature, the right timing, the right quality of attention. And like the insights you have received tonight, its full flavor only emerges when given space to unfold naturally. As you lift the warm cup to your lips, feel how the simple act of drinking tea becomes a meditation on presence. The heat against your palms, the subtle flavors blooming on your tongue, the gentle steam carrying botanical essences to awaken your senses. Notice how Kava's recognition of the inner teacher allows you to appreciate this moment without seeking something better. Feel how Bahram's discovery of invisible treasure helps you recognize the abundance present in this simple cup. Sense how Tenzin's lesson about impermanence frees you to enjoy this tea completely, knowing that its temporary nature makes it more precious, not less. These three reflections, the master continues, their voice barely above a whisper, show you different faces of the same fundamental truth. Seeking ends when you recognize what you seek as your own nature. Wanting dissolves when you appreciate what is already here. Suffering from change transforms into dancing with the eternal flow of becoming. All three point to the same liberation, the freedom that comes from aligning with what is, rather than struggling against it. As the tea ceremony continues in perfect silence, you find your mind naturally settling into deeper and deeper states of rest. The three stories begin weaving themselves together in your unconscious, creating a tapestry of understanding that will continue working long after tonight's journey ends. Like master craftsmen collaborating on a single masterpiece, Kava's awakening, Bahram's contentment, and Tenzin's acceptance join their wisdom to build something greater than the sum of their parts. The master sets down their empty cup with a soft clink that seems to seal this portion of your journey. The mirrors have shown you the truth of your own luminous nature, they say, rising slowly and moving toward a doorway draped with silk curtains that shimmer like water in moonlight. Now we enter deeper realms, where the very boundaries between self and world, between dreamer and dream, begin to dissolve like morning mist, touched by the first rays of sun. Beyond the curtained doorway, The sound of gentle wind through leaves beckons like an ancient invitation. "Welcome," the master whispers, drawing back the silk to reveal a vision of breathtaking beauty, to the garden of dissolved boundaries, where 3 more teachings await, stories that will show you how life's greatest challenges become doorways to freedom, how perfect timing flows from surrender to natural rhythms, and how the very thoughts that seem to imprison you can become wings for your liberation. The garden of dissolved boundaries stretches before you like a living mandala, where the normal rules of growth and form seem to bend in service of a deeper wisdom. Moonlight filters through leaves that shimmer with colors not found in ordinary nature, silver blue bamboo that sways without wind, flowering vines that bloom in spirals of gold and deep purple, moss-covered stones that seem to pulse with gentle inner light. The very air feels different here, less dense, as if the boundaries between breath and space, between your body and the garden itself, have become permeable and flowing. Winding paths of crushed pearl and starlight lead deeper into this realm where the impossible becomes natural. Every step carries you further from the world of fixed categories and closer to a space where transformation happens as easily as leaves changing color with the seasons. The master guides you along a path bordered by flowers that seem to grow in reverse, their roots reaching toward the sky while their blossoms burrow into the earth. Yet somehow, they appear more vibrant and alive than any conventional garden. This is a place where limitations reveal themselves as invitations, where what seems backward might actually be the most direct path forward. "Here," the master says, settling onto a bench carved from what appears to be crystallized moonlight, "the 4th teaching awaits your reception." It speaks of a truth that challenges every assumption about growth, healing, and the very nature of what we call normal. Listen now to the story of the tree that grew backwards, and discover how what appears to be wrong with us might actually be the source of our greatest strength. In the heart of an ancient forest, where trees had grown in conventional patterns for thousands of years, there appeared one spring a seedling so unusual that the other trees whispered about it in their secret language of rustling leaves. This small tree, which the forest spirits would come to call altar, grew in a way that defied all natural laws. While every other tree sent its roots deep into the earth and stretched its branches toward the sky, altar did the opposite. Its roots grew upward, reaching toward the sun like gnarled fingers seeking light, while its branches dove downward into the soil, creating an intricate network of connections beneath the surface. The older trees in the forest were deeply troubled by this reversal of natural order. "This cannot be healthy," whispered the ancient oak, who had stood sentinel for 3 centuries. "Trees are meant to reach upward, to aspire toward heaven while staying grounded in earth. This backwards growth will surely lead to death." The wise willow, known for her flexibility and grace, swayed with concern. "The poor thing will never survive the storms," she murmured. "How can it weather the winds without proper roots to anchor it?" Even the forest creatures found altar disturbing. Birds attempting to nest in its downward growing branches found themselves upside down and confused. Squirrels who tried to climb its sky-reaching roots discovered they were ascending instead of finding the usual security of hidden hollows. Everything about this tree seemed wrong, broken, contrary to the wisdom accumulated over millennia of forest life. As seasons passed, the forest community's concern for Alta grew. A group of well-meaning saplings, guided by their elders' advice, formed what they called the healing circle. They surrounded Alta with their conventional growth, hoping their proper example might inspire it to correct its backwards development. "Just watch us," they said encouragingly. "See how we send our roots down and our branches up. Copy our pattern, and you'll grow strong and normal like the rest of us." But Alta, despite the loving pressure from its forest family, continued growing in its impossible way. Its aerial roots reached higher toward the sky each year, creating a canopy of twisted wood that caught rainwater in unexpected places. Its underground branches spread deeper through the soil, forming connections with root systems that no conventional tree could reach. To every observer, it appeared to be a magnificent mistake, a beautiful aberration that would eventually pay the price for its refusal to conform. The forest's worry about Alta intensified when the dry years came. For 3 consecutive summers, rain fell sparingly, and the usual water sources began to fail. Wells dried up, streams became trickles, and many of the forest's strongest trees began to show signs of stress. Their leaves yellowed earlier each season, their growth slowed, and some of the younger saplings in the healing circle began to wither despite their perfect, conventional form. The ancient oak's massive trunk showed cracks, and even the adaptable willow's graceful branches hung limp with thirst. During the worst of the drought, when the forest community had resigned itself to enduring years of struggle and loss, something remarkable was discovered about Alta's apparently backwards growth. A young deer, desperate for water, had wandered to the base of the upside-down tree and found something that shouldn't have existed. Where Alta's aerial roots caught and channeled rainwater, small pools had formed in the hollows of its sky-reaching root system. And where its underground branches had been spreading for years, they had tapped into deep aquifers that no conventional root system could access. Alta, the tree everyone had worried about, had become the forest's salvation. Its backwards growth had created a unique water collection and distribution system that could function even in the driest conditions. The aerial roots gathered every precious drop of morning dew and occasional rainfall, storing it in natural reservoirs, formed by their unusual structure. Meanwhile, its underground branches had found and accessed water sources so deep that even the most severe drought couldn't affect them. Through its reversed root system, Alta began sharing this precious water with its neighbors, its underground branches, creating connections that allowed life-giving moisture to flow to trees that would otherwise have perished. As word of this miracle spread through the forest, the other trees began to understand that what they had seen as a defect was actually a design perfectly suited for extreme conditions. Alta's backwards growth hadn't been a mistake or a rebellion against natural law. It had been an adaptation to challenges that hadn't yet revealed themselves. While every other tree grew according to normal conditions, Alta had somehow sensed the coming drought and developed accordingly. "I don't understand," said the ancient oak, his voice filled with wonder and humility. "How did you know to grow this way? How did you sense what was coming when the rest of us prepared only for typical seasons?" Alta's answer came through the gentle rustling of its upside-down canopy. "I didn't know anything about droughts or water systems," it replied. "I simply grew according to what felt true for me, even when everyone else thought it was wrong. I followed my own nature instead of copying the patterns that worked for others. I trusted that there was wisdom in my difference, even when I couldn't see the purpose." The wise willow swayed thoughtfully. "So your backwards growth wasn't backwards at all," she mused. "It was forward growth for conditions we hadn't yet encountered. You were growing into a future that none of the rest of us could see." "Perhaps," Alta replied gently, "what you call my backwards nature is simply a different kind of wisdom. Maybe some of us are meant to grow in ways that seem wrong to others because we're designed for challenges that haven't arrived yet. Maybe our differences aren't flaws to be fixed, but gifts waiting for the right conditions to reveal their purpose." From that day forward, the forest's understanding of growth and normalcy changed completely. The healing circle disbanded, not because their intentions weren't loving, but because they realized that trying to make everyone grow the same way was actually limiting the forest's ability to adapt to changing conditions. Instead, they formed what they called the diversity circle, celebrating and protecting the unique growth patterns that emerged in each new seedling. Years later, when climate patterns shifted and other unusual challenges arose, the forest found that many trees had begun developing their own adaptations, some growing twisted trunks that could flex in unprecedented storms, others developing leaves that could photosynthesize in reduced sunlight, still others creating symbiotic relationships with fungi that helped them communicate and share resources in entirely new ways. Each had learned from Alta's example that their own unique nature might be exactly what the forest needed, even if it didn't match conventional wisdom about how trees should grow. The ancient oak, now nourished by water flowing through Alta's underground network, often reflected on the lesson this backwards tree had taught the entire forest community. "We spent so much energy trying to fix what we thought was broken," he would tell young saplings. "But the broken thing was actually our narrow idea of what normal should look like. True health isn't about conforming to a pattern. It's about expressing your authentic nature so fully that you can serve purposes that haven't even been imagined yet." Alta continued to grow in its unique way, its aerial roots reaching ever higher, while its underground branches spread deeper and wider. Travelers from distant forests would come to marvel at the tree that grew backwards, and many would return to their own communities with a new understanding of the relationship between difference and strength. Children who felt like they didn't fit normal patterns would sit beneath Alta's unusual canopy and feel, perhaps for the first time, that their differences might be exactly what made them valuable. Here in the Garden of Dissolved Boundaries, as Alta's story settles into your consciousness like roots finding water, consider the ways you might have been growing backwards in your own life. What aspects of yourself have you tried to fix or change because they didn't match other people's patterns of normal? Perhaps you're naturally more sensitive than others around you, feeling emotions deeply in a world that often values toughness. Maybe you think in ways that seem scattered to others, but actually make unique connections that linear thinking couldn't discover. Or perhaps you found yourself drawn to paths that others consider impractical, following an inner guidance that doesn't match conventional wisdom about success or happiness. Like Ulta's aerial roots that seemed to reach in the wrong direction until drought revealed their wisdom, your differences might be preparing you for challenges and opportunities that haven't yet revealed themselves. What you've been told is backwards about, you might actually be forward growth for a future that others can't yet see. Your sensitive nature might be exactly what's needed to navigate emotional complexity in relationships. Your unconventional thinking might be perfectly designed for problems that require creative solutions. Your impractical dreams might be the very vision that guides you toward contributions no one else could make. Let this teaching work in your being like underground water, flowing to nourish growth you didn't know was possible. Feel how the shame around your differences might transform into curiosity about their hidden purpose. Notice how the pressure to conform might relax into trust in your own unique adaptation to life's challenges. The master rises from the crystallized moonlight bench, their movement causing ripples of silver light to dance across the garden paths. Ulta's teaching prepares you for an even deeper mystery, they say, their voice carrying the promise of wisdom, yet more profound. Now you will discover how trying to force timing creates suffering, while surrendering to natural rhythms unlocks a flow of perfect synchronicity. Come, let us walk deeper into the garden, where the silent bell of perfect timing awaits your listening. The path winds deeper into the garden of dissolved boundaries, past groves of bamboo that chime softly without any wind to move them, their hollow stems creating a natural symphony that seems to emerge from the earth itself. Each step carries you further into a realm where time moves differently, where the urgent pace of the ordinary world gives way to rhythms as old as tides and seasons. Fireflies dance in patterns that follow no earthly logic, their light pulsing in harmony with your heartbeat, as if the very garden is learning to breathe with you. At the heart of this mystical landscape stands a sight that stops you in wonder. A bell tower rises from a grove of ancient cedars, its structure seemingly grown rather than built, with living wood spiraling upward to cradle a bell of such perfect proportions that it appears to be cast from crystallized silence itself. The bell hangs motionless in the still air, its bronze surface reflecting moonlight like captured starbeams. Yet despite its beauty and obvious craftsmanship, something about it seems incomplete, as if waiting for a moment that has not yet arrived. This, the master says softly, gesturing toward the silent bell, is where our fifth teaching lives. In this grove dwells a wisdom that challenges every human impulse to rush, to force, to make things happen according to our own schedule. Listen now to the story of the silent bell of perfect timing and discover how the universe's clock keeps time according to principles far more elegant than anything our minds can devise. High in the mountains of ancient Korea, in a monastery perched between earth and sky like a meditation cushion balanced on the world's edge, lived a young monk named Jindo, whose greatest virtue was also his greatest challenge. Jindo possessed a heart so eager to serve, so passionate about awakening, that he approached every aspect of monastic life with an intensity that both inspired and exhausted his fellow practitioners. He was always the first to rise for morning meditation, the last to sleep after evening prayers, and the most dedicated student during teaching sessions. Yet for all his effort and sincere devotion, he struggled with a restlessness that seemed to grow stronger the harder he tried to overcome it. The monastery was famous throughout the region for its great bell, a massive bronze creation that had been blessed by masters for over 500 years. This bell was said to ring only when the moment was perfectly ripe for awakening, when the conditions of heart, mind, and cosmic harmony aligned in such precise balance that its tone could carry listeners directly into enlightenment. Monks would travel from distant monasteries, hoping to hear even a single note from this legendary instrument. Some waited months without ever hearing it sound. Others arrived just as it began to ring and experienced transformations that changed their entire understanding of reality. Jindo had been at the monastery for 3 years and had never heard the great bell ring. This silence gnawed at him like a spiritual hunger that no amount of study or practice could satisfy. He would sit in meditation beneath the bell tower, concentrating so intensely on listening that his entire body became rigid with effort. He would question the elder monks about the precise conditions that caused the bell to sound, taking detailed notes and trying to recreate those circumstances through careful planning and intense preparation. The harder he tried to make the bell ring, the more stubbornly silent it remained. "Master," Jindo finally asked the monastery's abbot, his voice tight with frustration, "I have meditated with perfect posture, studied the sutras with complete dedication, and maintained the precepts without fail. Why does the great bell remain silent for me? What am I missing? What must I do to hear its awakening tone?" The ancient abbot, whose eyes held the patient depths of mountain lakes, smiled with infinite compassion. "Young Jindo," he replied gently, "you are trying to make music by grabbing the wind. The great bell doesn't ring because we demand it, or even because we deserve it. It rings when our inner rhythm finally matches the rhythm of the universe itself. Your effort to hear it is like trying to catch your own shadow. The very chasing prevents the catching." But Jindo's earnest nature couldn't accept what seemed like passive waiting. If there was a rhythm of the universe to match, surely there must be a practice to develop that matching. He began studying the movements of seasons, tracking the phases of the moon, observing the daily patterns of light and shadow across the monastery grounds. He developed elaborate theories about cosmic timing and created detailed schedules for meditation that aligned with celestial events. Still, the bell remained as silent as stone, unmoved by his increasingly sophisticated attempts to crack the code of perfect timing. One autumn morning, after a particularly frustrating night of waiting beneath the silent bell, during what his calculations had predicted would be an optimal moment for its ringing, Jindo found himself overwhelmed by a weariness deeper than physical exhaustion. His 3 years of intense effort had brought him knowledge, discipline, and respect from his fellow monks, but not the direct experience of awakening he craved. Sitting beneath the great bell, as dawn light filtered through the monastery grounds, he felt something inside him finally surrender. "I give up," he whispered to the morning air. "I don't know how to make this happen. I don't know the right practice, the right timing, the right anything. If awakening comes, let it come. If the bell rings, let it ring. I'm tired of trying to force the universe to follow my schedule. With this surrender, Jindo felt his entire body releasing tension he hadn't realized he was carrying. His breathing deepened naturally. His mind, usually spinning with plans and analyses, settled into a quietness he had never experienced, despite years of meditation practice. For the first time since arriving at the monastery, he wasn't trying to achieve anything, attain anything, or make anything happen. He was simply present, like a bird resting on a branch, requiring nothing from the moment except the grace of being alive within it. As Jindo sat in this newfound state of open receptivity, the morning continued to unfold around him with a richness he had previously been too focused to notice. Dew sparkled on spiderwebs like tiny diamonds celebrating the dawn. A mountain breeze carried the scent of pine and wild jasmine. Somewhere in the distance, a nightingale sang its liquid song to the growing light. And underneath all these beautiful details, Jindo became aware of something he had never perceived before, a vast rhythm that seemed to pulse through everything, connecting dewdrop to star, connecting his heartbeat to the breathing of the earth itself. In that moment of profound recognition, when Jindo's individual sense of time dissolved into universal timing, the great bell began to ring, but the sound that emerged was unlike anything he had imagined during his years of eager anticipation. Rather than the dramatic, attention-grabbing tone he had expected, the bell's voice was so perfectly harmonized with the moment that it seemed less like sound and more like silence becoming audible. It didn't break the morning's peace. It revealed the peace that had always been present, hidden beneath the noise of his striving. The bell's tone seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere, as if the entire universe had found its voice. As each resonant wave washed over him, Jindo felt layers of effort and anxiety dissolving like morning mist touched by sunlight. He understood with crystal clarity that the bell had not been waiting for him to become worthy of hearing it. Instead, it had been waiting for him to become quiet enough to recognize that its song had been playing all along, woven into the fabric of every moment he had been too busy trying to improve. When the bell's song finally faded into the morning silence, Jindo found that something fundamental had shifted in his understanding. The awakening he had been chasing so desperately was not a distant goal to be achieved, but a present reality to be recognized. Perfect timing was not something to be calculated or forced, but something to be surrendered to, like a river current that carries us effortlessly when we stop struggling against its flow. From that day forward, Jindo's entire approach to practice transformed. Instead of trying to make things happen according to his timeline, he learned to listen for the natural rhythms that were always present. His meditation became less about achieving particular states and more about aligning with whatever was arising in each moment. His daily activities flowed with an ease that amazed his fellow monks, who noticed that Jindo seemed to be in the right place at the right time with an almost magical consistency. "How did you learn to move with such perfect timing?" a younger monk asked him one day. "You always seem to know exactly when to speak and when to remain silent, when to act and when to wait. It's as if you've discovered the secret of divine timing." Jindo smiled with the gentle humor of someone who has learned that the greatest secrets are often the simplest truths. I discovered that divine timing isn't something we create, he replied. It's something we align with. The universe is always moving in perfect rhythm, like a cosmic dance that never stops. Our choice is whether to fight against this dance or learn to move with it. When we stop trying to force our own timing and start listening to the timing that's already present, we discover that we've been dancing partners with perfection all along. Years later, as Jindo became a teacher himself, he would often bring students to sit beneath the great bell. But instead of encouraging them to try to make it ring, he would teach them to listen for the silence between its occasional songs. The bell rings when it rings, he would tell them. But the silence that holds its ringing is always present. Learn to rest in that silence, and you'll discover that perfect timing is not about when things happen, but about how completely we can be present for whatever is happening now. The great bell continued to ring at its own mysterious intervals, blessing those who happened to be present with its awakening tone. But under Jindo's guidance, students learned that the real teaching was not in hearing the bell, but in developing the quality of listening that could receive its wisdom. They discovered that every moment contains its own perfect timing when met with the right quality of attention, and that the universe is constantly offering awakening to those who are quiet enough to hear it. Here in the Garden of Dissolved Boundaries, as the story of the silent bell settles into your consciousness like seeds finding their season for sprouting, consider the places in your life where you might be trying to force timing rather than flowing with it. What are you attempting to make happen according to your schedule that might be waiting for a different kind of readiness? Perhaps you've been pushing for a relationship to develop faster than its natural pace allows. Maybe you're frustrated with creative projects that aren't unfolding according to your timeline. Or perhaps you're trying to heal emotional wounds or change life circumstances through sheer force of will, growing impatient when transformation doesn't happen as quickly as your mind demands. Like Jindo's discovery beneath the great bell, there might be wisdom in releasing your grip on how and when things should happen. What if the delays you're experiencing aren't obstacles but preparations? What if the universe's timing, which can seem so frustratingly slow, is actually orchestrating synchronicities and readiness that your individual perspective cannot perceive? What if surrendering to natural timing doesn't mean becoming passive, but rather learning to act in harmony with rhythms larger and wiser than your personal agenda? Let this teaching work in your being like a bell that rings not when you demand it, but when you're ready to truly hear its wisdom. Feel how the anxiety about timing might transform into trust in a process that knows more about perfect unfolding than your worried mind ever could. Notice how the desperate pushing might relax into patient alignment with forces that are always working in your favor, even when you can't see their design. The master begins walking again, leading you deeper into the garden where shadows and moonlight dance together like old friends. Jindo's surrender to divine timing prepares you for perhaps the most liberating discovery of all, they say, their voice carrying anticipation of wonders yet to be revealed. Now you will learn how the very thoughts that seem to imprison you can become the wings of your freedom. Come, let us approach the shore where the fisherman's net of thoughts awaits to teach you about the ocean of awareness in which all mental activity swims. The garden path curves around a grove of silver birches, whose leaves whisper secrets in a language older than words. As you follow the master deeper into this realm where boundaries dissolve like sugar in water, the sound of gentle waves begins to reach your ears. Through the trees appears a sight that seems impossible yet perfectly natural within this mystical landscape. A vast ocean that somehow exists within the monastery garden, its waters reflecting not just the moon above, but stars from skies you've never seen. The shoreline is made of sand that sparkles with inner light, each grain containing what appears to be a tiny galaxy of swirling luminescence. At the water's edge sits a simple fishing boat, its weathered wood polished smooth by countless tides. Beside it stands a figure who seems as eternal as the ocean itself, an old fisherman whose eyes hold the depth of infinite waters, and whose hands move with the patient grace of someone who has learned to work in harmony with forces far greater than individual will. As you approach, you notice something extraordinary about his fishing net. Instead of catching fish, it seems to be pulling up thoughts, actual thoughts that swim and dart through the water like schools of luminescent creatures, each one carrying its own particular frequency of worry, hope, memory, or dream. "Welcome to the shore of consciousness," the master says softly, settling onto a piece of driftwood that seems to have been worn into the perfect shape for contemplation. Here dwells our sixth teaching, perhaps the most practical wisdom you will receive tonight. Listen now to the story of the fisherman's net of thoughts, and discover how the mind that seems to trap you can become the very instrument of your liberation. On the mystical island of Mindanao, where the boundary between inner and outer oceans has always been fluid, lived a fisherman named Kai, whose unusual catch had made him both famous and troubled throughout the archipelago. Unlike other fishermen who brought up fish, shells, and seaweed in their nets, Kai's nets consistently caught something far stranger: the actual thoughts of people from villages all along the coast. Each morning when he pulled in his nets, they would be teeming with the mental chatter of thousands of minds, worries about money glowing like anxious orange fish, regrets swimming in murky brown schools, fears darting about like electric eels, and hopes floating near the surface like golden jellyfish. At first, Kai thought this strange gift might be a blessing. Surely understanding what people were thinking could help him serve his community better, perhaps even solve problems before they became serious. But as days turned to months, and his nets continued to fill with an endless stream of mental activity, Kai found himself overwhelmed by the sheer volume and intensity of human thinking. The constant flow of other people's thoughts mixed with his own, until he could no longer tell which worries belonged to whom. Sleep became impossible as his mind churned with the accumulated anxiety of entire communities. "I can't bear this burden any longer," Kai confided to his wife, Lin, whose own thoughts he could see swimming in his net each morning like familiar blue-green fish. "Every day I pull up thousands of thoughts, and they're nearly all the same. Worry about the future, regret about the past, fear about things that might never happen. People's minds are like storms that never cease, and now my mind has become stormy too. I don't know how to find peace in this ocean of constant thinking." Lin, wise in the way that comes from living close to the sea's rhythms, asked her husband a question, that would change everything. "My love," she said gently, "when you're fishing for regular fish, do you become disturbed by the water that comes up with them in your net?" Kai looked puzzled. "Of course not. The water is just the medium the fish swim in. I expect water to come up with my catch. I'd be surprised if it didn't." "And what do you do with that water?" Lin continued. "I let it flow back into the ocean where it belongs," Kai replied, still not understanding where her questions were leading. Lin smiled with the infinite patience of waves returning to shore. What if thoughts are like that water, and awareness is like the ocean they come from? What if the problem isn't that you're catching thoughts, but that you're trying to hold on to them, instead of letting them flow back to where they belong? That night, Kai sat by the ocean's edge, contemplating his wife's wisdom. As he watched waves rise from the sea's surface and return to it in endless cycles, he began to understand something profound about the nature of thought and awareness. Thoughts, like waves, were temporary movements within consciousness, not solid things to be grasped or permanent problems to be solved, but fluid phenomena that arose and passed away according to their own natural rhythm. The next morning, when Kai pulled up his net filled with the usual teeming mass of mental activity, he tried a different approach. Instead of examining each thought, cataloging it, or feeling responsible for it, he simply acknowledged their presence and then imagined them flowing back into the vast ocean of awareness from which they had emerged. To his amazement, as he released his attachment to the thoughts he had caught, his own mind began to clear, like muddy water settling into transparency. Day after day, Kai practiced this new way of relating to the thoughts in his net. He learned to see them not as problems to be solved or stories to be believed, but as temporary visitors passing through the vast space of awareness. Some thoughts were pleasant, others disturbing, but all shared the same essential nature. They appeared, lingered for a while, and then naturally dissolved back into the consciousness that had given birth to them. The key was not to fight them or cling to them, but to let them flow like water through an open hand. As Kai developed this practice of thought release, something miraculous began to happen. The quality of thoughts appearing in his net started to change. The heavy, anxious thoughts that had once dominated his catch began to lighten and clarify. More creative thoughts appeared, innovative solutions to community problems, artistic inspirations, moments of gratitude and joy that sparkled like tropical fish in crystal waters. It was as if his practice of releasing thoughts with loving awareness was somehow purifying the very ocean of consciousness from which all thinking arose. Word of Kai's transformation spread throughout the island communities. People noticed that after visiting the fisherman and watching him work with his unusual catch, their own minds seemed clearer and more peaceful. Children who had been anxious about school would spend an hour with Kai and return home calm and confident. Adults, struggling with depression, would sit by his boat and find their heavy thoughts naturally lightening, like clouds dissipating in sunlight. "How do you do it?" asked a village elder whose chronic worry had plagued him for decades. "How do you help people find peace with their thinking?" Kai smiled and gestured toward his net, which was currently full of thoughts swimming in patterns of light and color. "I don't do anything to the thoughts themselves," he explained. "I simply show them the way back home. Every thought, no matter how troublesome it seems, arises from the same source, the vast awareness that is your true nature. When you stop fighting thoughts or trying to keep them, and instead let them return to that awareness, you discover that you are not your thoughts. You are the ocean in which thoughts swim, the sky through which clouds pass, the silence in which all sounds arise and fade." The village elder watched as Kai gently lifted a particularly dark and heavy thought from his net, what appeared to be someone's deep fear about death. Instead of recoiling from its intensity, Kai held it with compassionate attention for a moment, then released it back into the ocean, where it immediately began to transform, its darkness dissolving into the luminous waters like ink, dispersing in clear liquid. "But how do I let go of thoughts that feel so important, so urgent?" the elder asked. "Some of my worries feel like life or death matters that I can't simply release." Kai nodded with understanding. "This is the most common confusion," he replied. "We think that paying attention to a thought means we have to believe it or act on it. But awareness can hold any thought, even very intense ones, without being disturbed by its content. It's like this ocean holding both gentle fish and fierce sharks. The ocean isn't harmed by what swims within it because it's so much vaster than any individual creature." To demonstrate, Kai reached into his net and pulled up a thought fish that was blazing with anxiety about financial security. "Watch," he said, holding the anxious thought in his awareness without resistance. "I can see this worry clearly, understand what it's trying to protect, even feel compassion for the person whose mind created it. But I don't have to become this worry or let it determine my state of peace. I can hold it in awareness the way the sky holds a storm, spaciously, without being disturbed by its intensity." As the elder watched, the financial worry began to settle and clarify in Kai's peaceful attention. What had appeared as raw anxiety transformed into useful information about planning and preparation, stripped of its emotional charge and seen clearly for what it was, simply energy, trying to ensure survival and security. When Kai released this clarified thought back into the ocean, it swam away as a gentle reminder about practical responsibility rather than a source of stress and sleeplessness. Over the years, Kai's practice evolved into a teaching that helped entire communities develop a healthier relationship with their mental activity. He would invite people to sit by the ocean and imagine their thoughts as fish swimming in the vast waters of awareness. "Don't try to stop thinking," he would tell them. "That's like trying to stop the ocean from having waves. Instead, practice being the ocean itself, vast, deep, and naturally peaceful, regardless of what swims within it." Students learned to recognize the difference between being aware of thoughts and being lost in them. They discovered that awareness itself was never disturbed by even the most chaotic thinking, just as the ocean's depths remain calm, even during the fiercest surface storms. Most importantly, they found that thoughts released with loving awareness often transformed into wisdom, while thoughts grasped tightly became sources of suffering. Kai's nets continued to catch thoughts from across the island communities, but now his work had become a form of service. Each thought he received with awareness and released with compassion seemed to purify not just his own consciousness, but the collective mental atmosphere of his entire region. Visitors to the island often remarked on the unusual peace and clarity they felt in the air, as if the very atmosphere had been cleansed of mental pollution. Here in the Garden of Dissolved Boundaries, as Kai's teaching settles into your consciousness like wisdom finding its home in the depths of understanding, notice the thoughts that might be swimming through your awareness right now. Instead of following them or fighting them, can you practice being like the ocean that holds them? Perhaps there are worries about tomorrow's responsibilities floating near the surface of your mind. Maybe fragments of today's conversations are still darting about like busy fish. There might be plans, memories, judgments, or dreams all swimming together in the waters of your consciousness. What if none of these thoughts define you any more than waves define the ocean? What if you are the vast awareness in which all thinking appears and disappears, as spacious and undisturbed as the sky through which all clouds pass? Let this teaching work in your being like a gentle current that shows thoughts the way back to their source. Feel how the struggle with mental activity might transform into a dance of awareness and content. Notice how the identification with thoughts might relax into the recognition that you are the consciousness that can observe all thinking without being limited by any particular thought. The ancient fisherman by the shore nods to you with infinite kindness, his eyes reflecting the same vast peace that you are beginning to recognize as your own true nature. The master rises from the driftwood seat, their movement causing ripples of light to dance across the mystical waters. The Garden of Dissolved Boundaries has given you its three treasures, they say with deep satisfaction. Now it is time for us to walk together to the sacred chamber of deepest rest, where the most profound teachings await, stories that will carry you into the very heart of peace itself, where sleep and awakening become one seamless dance of consciousness. As you turn away from the mystical ocean, you find that your understanding of walking has subtly transformed during your time in the garden. Each step now feels different, not merely a movement from one place to another, but a meditation in motion, a practice of being fully present with the miracle of movement itself. The master moves with the fluid grace of someone who has learned that the journey itself is the destination. Each footfall a prayer, each breath a celebration of this moment's perfect completeness. The path leading away from the ocean is made of stones that seem to have been polished by centuries of mindful footsteps. Each stone catches and reflects the garden's ethereal light, creating stepping stones of luminescence that guide you deeper into the monastery's heart. As your feet touch these ancient markers, you can feel the presence of countless seekers who have walked this same path before you, their accumulated wisdom somehow absorbed into the very earth beneath your steps. You are not walking alone. You are part of an eternal procession of souls moving toward the deepest peace. With each mindful step, you notice how the three garden teachings have begun to integrate into your very being. Altar's backwards tree has taught your body to trust its own unique rhythm, allowing you to move without the strain of trying to walk like everyone else expects. Jindo's discovery with the silent bell has shown your feet how to find their own perfect timing, neither rushing towards some distant goal nor dragging with reluctance. And Kai's wisdom about thoughts flowing like water has freed your mind to simply be present with the sensation of walking, without the usual mental commentary about where you're going or how you're doing. The Master's voice drifts back to you as you walk, soft as evening wind through silk. Notice, they say without turning around, how walking becomes meditation when you stop trying to get somewhere and start being fully where you are with each step. This is the secret that transforms every ordinary activity into a gateway to the extraordinary, complete presence with what is actually happening now. As you continue along the luminous path, the landscape around you begins to shift once again. The garden's wild beauty gradually gives way to something even more profound. Corridors that seem to exist both within the monastery's ancient walls and within the depths of consciousness itself. The boundaries between inner and outer space become increasingly fluid, until you're no longer certain whether you're walking through physical hallways or moving through the sacred architecture of your own deepening awareness. The walls around you seem to breathe with gentle light, their surfaces adorned with murals that depict not just scenes from ancient teachings, but somehow reflect the very insights you've been receiving tonight. In one painting, you see Kava by her moonlit lake, but her face holds your own dawning recognition of the inner teacher. Another shows Bahram and the Darvish, but their simple stone carries the same appreciation you're discovering for life's invisible treasures. Each image serves as both artistic beauty and living mirror, showing you how these ancient stories have become part of your own journey toward understanding. Your breathing has naturally deepened during this walking meditation, each inhalation drawing in not just air, but the accumulated peace of this sacred space. Each exhalation releases layers of tension you didn't know you were carrying, letting go of the day's accumulated stress, like leaves falling naturally from trees in autumn. The rhythm of your footsteps and breath begin to synchronize, creating an internal symphony that matches the monastery's own subtle harmonies. Ahead, you begin to sense, rather than see your destination, a presence of such profound stillness that it seems to draw you forward like a gentle gravitational pull. The very air grows quieter with each step, not just in terms of sound but in quality, as if approaching a space where even the molecules move more slowly, more reverently. This is the threshold to the sacred chamber of deepest rest, where the monastery's most protected teachings dwell, like ancient guardians of ultimate peace. The Master pauses before an archway that seems to be carved from crystallized silence itself. Beyond this threshold, they say, their voice now barely above a whisper, lie teachings so profound that they work primarily while you sleep, planting seeds in consciousness that flower only in the deepest rest. These final stories will carry you into realms where healing happens without effort, where wisdom reveals itself through dreams, and where the very act of sleep becomes a form of awakening. As you cross this final threshold together, you feel yourself entering a space that exists at the very heart of peace itself. Here, in the sacred chamber of deepest rest, the monastery's most precious gifts await, teachings that will transform your sleep into a journey of profound renewal and your dreams into vehicles of healing wisdom. The walking meditation has prepared you perfectly for this ultimate sanctuary, where movement finally dissolves into perfect stillness, and the last barriers between seeking and finding disappear like morning mist touched by the first rays of dawn. Behind you, the path you've traveled seems to fade into dreamlike memory, while ahead, an ocean of deep rest beckons like the most comfortable bed imaginable. You have arrived at the place where stories become lullabies, where wisdom becomes dreams, and where the boundary between sleeping and awakening reveals itself as nothing more than an invitation to rest in the consciousness that contains them both. The sacred chamber of deepest rest emerges around you like a vast crystalline cave where time itself has learned to move more slowly. The walls curve upward and inward, creating a sense of being held within the gentle embrace of the earth itself. Soft bioluminescent moss provides the only illumination, casting everything in a gentle blue-green glow that feels more like moonlight, filtered through ocean depths than any earthly radiance. The very air seems thicker here, more nourishing, as if each breath draws in not just oxygen, but pure peace distilled into its most essential form. At the chamber's heart stands a simple meditation cushion placed before what appears to be a window, looking out into infinite space. But as you settle into this sacred seat beside the Master, you realize this is no ordinary window. It's a portal into the deepest mysteries of existence itself, where stars are born and consciousness awakens to its own limitless nature. Through this opening, you can see landscapes that exist nowhere and everywhere, realms where the impossible becomes natural, and healing happens through the simple act of witnessing. "Here," the Master whispers, their voice now so soft it seems to arise from the silence itself. "We enter the realm where effort dissolves into effortlessness, where trying becomes being, where the very struggle to find peace reveals itself as the only thing preventing its natural emergence." Listen now to the seventh teaching, the story of the mountain that moved itself, and discover how the greatest strength comes not from force, but from alignment with the deepest currents of existence. In the ancient Himalayas, where peaks pierced the sky like fingers reaching toward enlightenment, there stood a mountain named Akhala, whose name meant immovable in the sacred Sanskrit tongue. For millions of years, Akhala had prided itself on its absolute stability, its unwavering presence, its complete resistance to every force that sought to change its position. Through earthquakes that shook the earth to its core, through glaciers that carved valleys from solid stone, through winds that could move entire forests, Akhala remained exactly where it had always been, as solid and unmovable as the very concept of permanence itself. This steadfastness had become Akhala's identity, the source of its strength, and the foundation of its sense of purpose in the cosmic order. Other mountains looked to Achala as the perfect example of what a mountain should be: reliable, constant, unchanging through all the fluctuations of weather and time. "See how Achala stands," they would say to their children, during the violent storms that reshaped landscapes across the region. That is how we maintain our dignity and serve our purpose, by never giving in to any force that seeks to move us from our chosen place. But as eons passed, and Ahala's meditation on immovability deepened, a strange fatigue began to creep into its massive stone consciousness. The constant effort of resisting every current, every tremor, every natural force that flowed around and through the mountain range was becoming exhausting in ways that Achala had never imagined possible. Every earthquake required enormous energy to resist. Every glacier's pressure demanded tremendous focus to withstand. Every seasonal change called for renewed determination to remain exactly the same. What had once felt like natural strength was beginning to feel like an endless battle against the very fabric of existence itself. One particularly violent monsoon season, as Ahala strained against winds that seemed determined to reshape its very form, a voice spoke from deep within the mountain's stony heart. It was the voice of Prithvi, the Earth Mother herself, whose wisdom flowed through every grain of soil and fragment of rock throughout the world. "My dear Achala," she said with the infinite patience of geological time, "why do you work so hard to remain still?" "Because that is what mountains do," Achala replied, its voice rumbling through underground caverns like distant thunder. "We stand firm. We provide stability in a world of constant change. If I allow myself to be moved by every force that encounters me, how can I fulfill my purpose as a mountain?" Prithvi's laughter bubbled up through natural springs and echoed in the spaces between stones. "Oh, my steadfast child," she said with profound affection, "you have confused rigidity with stability, resistance with strength. True immovability doesn't come from fighting against movement. It comes from being so deeply rooted in your essential nature that you can dance with every change while never losing your center." Achala felt something stirring deep within its foundation, a recognition that challenged everything it had believed about strength and permanence. "But if I stop resisting," the mountain protested, "won't I be swept away by every storm, eroded by every glacier, diminished by every force that encounters me?" "Watch the water," Prithvi whispered, and suddenly Achala's attention was drawn to a stream that flowed down its slopes. The water moved constantly, adapting its course to every rock and crevice, bending around obstacles, finding the path of least resistance. Yet this fluid, yielding stream had carved canyons through solid stone, shaped valleys from mountain faces, and moved boulders that no amount of rigid force could budge. The water's power came not from resistance, but from persistent, gentle alignment with the natural laws of flow. "Or observe the trees," Prithvi continued, directing Achala's awareness to the ancient pines that grew on its slopes. During fierce storms, these trees didn't break because they knew how to bend. Their roots went deep, giving them unshakable foundation, but their trunks and branches swayed with every wind, dancing with forces that could have destroyed them if they had tried to remain rigidly upright. Their flexibility was their strength, their willingness to move with change, their secret to enduring through centuries of storms. As Achala contemplated these teachings, a profound shift began to occur in its understanding of what it meant to be truly immovable. Perhaps real stability wasn't about resisting all change, but about maintaining essential identity while allowing surface forms to adapt and flow. Maybe genuine strength came not from hardness, but from the kind of flexibility that could bend without breaking, move without losing center, change without losing essence. That night, for the first time in millions of years, Achala made a choice that would have seemed impossible to its former understanding. Instead of bracing against the earthquake tremors that rolled through the region, the mountain allowed itself to move with them. Rather than fighting the tectonic forces that sought to shift its position, Achala let itself flow like water, finding a new course. The sensation was initially terrifying. After eons of rigid resistance, this fluid movement felt like dissolution itself. But as Achala surrendered to the natural forces moving through the earth, something miraculous occurred. Instead of being damaged or diminished by its movement, the mountain found itself settling into a position of perfect balance that it had never experienced before. The new location felt so naturally right, so harmoniously aligned with the geological currents flowing through the region, that Achala realized it had been fighting against its own optimal position for countless ages. By allowing itself to move, it had found a stability far deeper than anything it had achieved through resistance. The other mountains watched in amazement as Achala's transformation unfolded. What they witnessed wasn't the collapse of their most reliable landmark, but the emergence of something even more impressive, a mountain that could maintain its essential mountainous nature while moving in perfect harmony with the forces that shaped the landscape. Achala had become like a master dancer, so perfectly attuned to the music of geological change that its movements enhanced rather than diminished its majestic presence. "How is this possible?" asked Davala, a nearby peak that had always admired Achala's former immobility. "How can you move and still be a mountain? How can you change position and maintain your dignity?" "I discovered," Achala replied, its voice now carrying a new quality of ease and flow, "that true immovability was never about my physical position. It was about my unshakable connection to the essence of what I am. When I stopped confusing my location with my identity, I found that I could move anywhere while remaining absolutely myself." The immovable aspect of a mountain isn't its coordinates on a map, it's the consciousness that observes all positions while being limited by none. As years passed, Achala's new way of being began to influence the entire mountain range. Peaks that had spent eons struggling against geological forces learned to dance with tectonic movements, finding positions of greater harmony and beauty. The landscape itself became more fluid and alive, constantly reshaping itself in response to natural forces, while maintaining its essential character as sacred high ground reaching toward the heavens. Pilgrims who came to meditate in the Himalayas noticed something different about the mountains in Achala's region. These peaks seemed to embody a teaching that words could never capture. They demonstrated how to be absolutely stable, in essence, while completely fluid in form. Visitors would often report profound insights about the nature of identity and change, understanding at a cellular level that their own true nature was like Achala's discovery, unshakable awareness that could flow through any experience without being disturbed by surface modifications. A sage who had spent decades studying the relationship between permanence and change came to dwell at Achala's base for a final period of contemplation. "Wise mountain," he said during his daily meditation practice, you have solved the great paradox that has puzzled philosophers for generations. How does one remain unchanged while embracing change? How does one maintain identity while allowing transformation? Ahala's response came not in words, but through a demonstration. During the sage's meditation, the mountain gently shifted its position, not dramatically, but with the fluid grace of someone adjusting their posture to find perfect comfort. Yet, even as its form moved, the sage could sense that the mountain's essential presence remained absolutely constant. The consciousness that was Ahala-ness didn't change by a single degree, even as the physical manifestation of that consciousness found new expression in space and time. I am always myself, came Ashala's inner teaching, regardless of where I stand. Movement and stillness are both expressions of the same unmoving awareness. Change and permanence dance together in the space of consciousness that I am. When you discover what in you never moves, you become free to move in any way that serves the highest good. The sage spent his remaining years sharing this mountain wisdom with seekers throughout the region. He taught them that true spiritual strength wasn't about becoming rigid in their practices or beliefs, but about developing such deep connection to their essential nature that they could adapt fluidly to any circumstance, while never losing their center. Like Ahala, they could learn to move through life with the ease of water while maintaining the stability of stone. Here, in the sacred chamber of deepest rest, as Ahala's teaching settles into the deepest layers of your being-like truth finding its home in consciousness itself, feel how this wisdom might transform your own relationship with effort and ease. Where in your life might you be trying too hard to remain fixed in positions that no longer serve your highest expression? Perhaps you've been holding rigidly to ways of thinking that once felt protective but now feel constraining. Maybe you've been resisting changes in your relationships, career, or life circumstances with such determination that you've exhausted yourself fighting against natural flow. Or perhaps you've been afraid that adapting to new situations might somehow compromise your authentic self, not realizing that your true nature is fluid enough to express itself beautifully in any form. Let Achala's discovery work in your consciousness, like underground springs finding new channels to flow. Feel how the struggle to control and resist might relax into trust in your own unshakable essence. Notice how the fear of change might transform into excitement about new ways your authentic self might express its creativity and wisdom. Allow the recognition to dawn that you can be completely yourself in any situation, any location, any stage of life, that your true, immovable nature is the awareness that observes all change while being touched by none. The Master's presence beside you has become so subtle it's more like a gentle warmth than a physical form. Achala's teaching of effortless being prepares you for an even deeper mystery, they whisper, their voice now indistinguishable from the silence that holds all sound. In the next story, you will discover how the very fabric of your dreams can become a weaving ground for healing and transformation. Rest now in the mountain's wisdom of perfect flow, and prepare to meet the night weaver who will show you how sleep itself becomes a sacred art. The sacred chamber seems to breathe around you, its crystalline walls pulsing gently with the rhythm of deep sleep cycles. Through the portal window, new landscapes appear, realms where dreams take visible form, where the boundaries between imagination and reality dissolve like sugar in warm tea. You can see vast workshops where nocturnal artisans labor with threads of starlight and memory, weaving the experiences of sleeping souls into tapestries of healing and understanding. The very air grows softer here, more conducive to the kind of deep rest where true transformation occurs beneath the surface of conscious awareness. In the distance, you hear the gentle sound of an ancient loom, its rhythmic clicking blending with your own heartbeat until you can't tell where the weaving ends and your pulse begins. This is the sound of the night weaver at work, crafting something specifically for you from the threads of your own dreams and experiences. Each click of the loom seems to release another layer of tension from your body. Each shuttle passed through the warp carries away another fragment of the day's accumulated stress. Listen now. The Master's voice emerges from everywhere and nowhere to the 8th teaching, the story of the night weaver's dream tapestry. This tale will show you how even your most troubled sleep can become a source of profound healing, how nightmares transform into gateways of liberation, and how the unconscious mind weaves wisdom in ways the waking mind could never imagine. Let this story carry you into the sacred realm where sleep becomes service, where dreams become medicine, and where rest becomes the deepest form of spiritual practice. In the mystical city of Oneira, where the veils between waking and sleeping have always been gossamer thin, there lived an extraordinary artisan known throughout the dream realms as Morphia, the Night Weaver. Her workshop existed in the liminal space between consciousness and sleep, accessible only to those who had learned to navigate the twilight regions of awareness, where thoughts become images and emotions take on the substance of silk. For centuries, Morphia had practiced the sacred art of dream weaving, creating tapestries from the nocturnal experiences of troubled sleepers that could heal wounds no medicine could touch. Each night, as the world settled into sleep, Morphia would feel the pull of countless dreamers whose rest was disturbed by unresolved pain, recurring nightmares, or traumas that played out endlessly in their unconscious minds. She could sense their distress like a spider feeling vibrations in her web, and with infinite compassion, she would reach across the dream realms to gather the raw material of their suffering. What appeared as terrifying nightmares to the dreamers revealed themselves to Morphia's trained perception as threads of pure potential, dark fibers that could be transformed into the most healing and beautiful patterns. Her ancient loom was unlike any earthly weaving device. Carved from wood that grew only in the deepest dreams, strung with silver threads that held the essence of peaceful sleep, it could take the chaotic energy of nightmares and reorganize it into tapestries of stunning beauty and profound therapeutic power. The process required not just technical skill, but deep spiritual understanding, the ability to see the hidden wisdom within every form of suffering, the concealed gift within every apparent curse. One night, Morphia became aware of a particularly intense disturbance in the dream realms. A young woman named Elena had been trapped for months in the same recurring nightmare, a terrifying scenario where she was endlessly falling through darkness, while voices of criticism and judgment echoed around her. The nightmare was so vivid and consuming that Elena had begun to fear sleep itself, staying awake for days at a time until exhaustion forced her into rest that brought only more torment. Her waking life had become a shadow of constant fatigue and growing despair. Morphia felt her heart open with compassion for this suffering soul. She prepared her loom with special care, knowing that Elena's particular pattern of pain would require the most delicate handling. As the young woman fell asleep despite her fears, Morphia began to weave, her fingers moving with the practiced grace of centuries as she gathered the threads of the nightmare and began to transform them. The falling sensation that terrorized Elena became, in Morphia's hands, threads of deep blue that spoke of trust and surrender. The voices of criticism were woven into silver strands that held the wisdom of discernment and inner strength. The encompassing darkness transformed into rich black threads that carried the power of the fertile void from which all creation emerges. As Morphia worked through the night, Elena's nightmare gradually shifted from a place of terror into something resembling a sacred ritual of release. But the true magic of Morphia's art lay not just in transforming the content of dreams, but in revealing their hidden purpose. As she wove Elena's experience, she began to see the deeper pattern beneath the surface trauma. The falling dreams weren't just replaying old fears. They were trying to teach Elena how to let go of her need to control every aspect of her life. The critical voices weren't just echoes of past judgment. They were calling her attention to areas where she was being unnecessarily harsh with herself. The darkness wasn't empty space to be feared. It was the pregnant emptiness of possibility waiting to be born. As Morphia continued weaving through the depths of the night, something beautiful began to emerge on her loom. Elena's nightmare threads had been transformed into a tapestry of extraordinary beauty, an image of a woman learning to fly, surrounded by voices of encouragement and guidance, moving through a star-filled sky that held infinite potential. The tapestry didn't deny the reality of Elena's fears, but showed them in their transformed state, revealing how every element of her suffering contained the seeds of her liberation. When Elena awoke the next morning, she felt different in a way she couldn't immediately explain. The memory of her nightmare was still present, but it no longer carried the same charge of terror. Instead, she found herself curious about what the dream might be trying to tell her. For the first time in months, she felt a spark of excitement about the possibilities that lay ahead, rather than dread about what might go wrong. She didn't know that her sleep had been visited by the Night Weaver, but she could feel the effects of that nocturnal healing working in ways that defied rational understanding. Over the following weeks, Elena's relationship with sleep began to transform. Her dreams gradually became less chaotic and more purposeful, as if some organizing intelligence was helping her unconscious mind process and integrate her experiences more effectively. She began to dream of solutions to problems that had seemed impossible during her waking hours. Creative inspirations would come to her in sleep that she could apply to her work and relationships. Most remarkably, she began to dream of forgiveness, gentle, healing dreams, where she made peace with people and situations from her past. What Elena didn't know was that Morphia continued to work with her dreams night after night, each session building upon the last. The Night Weaver had recognized Elena as someone whose healing could benefit not just herself, but many others who struggled with similar patterns of fear and self-criticism. Each tapestry Morphia created from Elena's transformed dreams became part of a larger pattern, a master weaving that could provide healing energy to anyone who needed to learn the lessons Elena was integrating. As months passed, Elena found herself drawn to helping other people who struggled with sleep and anxiety. She began studying dream work and sleep medicine, eventually becoming a therapist who specialized in helping people transform their relationship with rest and the unconscious mind. Her own experience of healing through dreams gave her a unique ability to guide others through their nighttime journeys, teaching them to see their dreams as allies rather than enemies. One evening, during deep meditation before sleep, Elena became aware of a presence that had been helping her all along. In the liminal space between waking and dreaming, she found herself in Morphia's workshop, watching the Night Weaver work at her ancient loom. The artisan looked up from her, weaving with eyes that held the compassion of starlight, and smiled at Elena with infinite tenderness. "You have learned to work with me," Morphia said, her voice carrying the gentle rhythm of shuttle through warp. "Your dreams have become conscious. Your sleep has become service. Every night now, as you rest, you help me weave healing for others who struggle as you once did." Elena looked at the loom and saw that the tapestry currently taking shape contained threads from countless dreamers, people from around the world whose nightmares and difficult dreams were being transformed into patterns of healing, wisdom. Her own experiences had become part of a vast network of nocturnal healing, each person's journey toward peace, contributing to the collective wisdom available to all who suffered. "How is this possible?" Elena asked, filled with wonder at the cosmic artistry unfolding before her. "Every dream," Morphia explained, "is both personal healing and universal service. When you transform your own patterns of fear into patterns of trust, you create new possibilities in the collective unconscious. Your individual healing becomes a gift to anyone who needs to learn what you have learned. This is why sleep is sacred work. In your dreams, you are not just processing your own experience, but contributing to the healing of the world." Morphia showed Elena how the tapestries she wove were not kept in her workshop, but were somehow distributed throughout the dream realms, appearing as healing imagery in the sleep of anyone who needed their particular medicine. A tapestry woven from someone's dreams of overcoming addiction might appear in the dreams of others struggling with dependency. A pattern created from healing relationship trauma might manifest in the dreams of people learning to love again. Each person's journey through their deepest challenges became a source of guidance and hope for others walking similar paths. "But what about nightmares that seem too dark to transform?" Elena asked, thinking of some of the more disturbing dreams she had witnessed in her therapeutic work. Morphia smiled with the patience of someone who had worked with every form of human suffering. "The darkest threads often create the most luminous patterns," she replied. "What appears as pure shadow to the dreamer may be the very material needed to weave unshakable courage, profound compassion, or fierce wisdom. No experience is too dark to contain the seeds of light. No nightmare too chaotic to hold the potential for transformation." My work is simply to help dreams remember their true nature as healers and teachers. As Elena's vision of the workshop began to fade with the approach of deeper sleep, Morphia offered her a final gift. From now on, the Night Weaver said, you will remember that every night is an opportunity for healing, not just for yourself, but for all beings. Your sleep becomes prayer, your dreams become service, your rest becomes a contribution to the healing of the world. Trust the process, surrender to the weaving, and know that even your most troubled sleep is being transformed into medicine for the world's pain. Elena awoke the next morning with tears of gratitude on her cheeks and a profound sense of purpose flowing through her entire being. She had discovered that sleep was not merely a biological necessity but a form of spiritual practice, a nightly opportunity to participate in the cosmic work of healing and transformation. Her dreams had become a sacred offering, her rest a form of service to all who suffered. From that day forward, Elena approached each night's sleep as a pilgrimage into the sacred. She would prepare for rest with the same reverence that others brought to meditation or prayer, knowing that her unconscious mind would spend the night weaving healing not just for herself, but for anyone who needed the medicine her dreams could provide. Her therapeutic practice flourished as she helped others discover the same sacred dimension of sleep, teaching them to approach their dreams as collaborations with cosmic forces of healing and wisdom. Years later, as Elena grew old in service to the night realms, she became known as a bridge between the world of the Night Weaver and ordinary human consciousness. Her students learned to see their most difficult dreams not as problems to be solved, but as raw material for the loom of transformation. They discovered that surrender to the dream process was itself a form of prayer, and that rest undertaken with conscious intention became a powerful force for healing in the world. The Night Weaver continued her ancient work, weaving tapestries of healing from the dreams of millions of souls, each person's journey through their deepest challenges, becoming a gift to the collective human story. And Elena, having learned to work consciously with the sacred artisan of sleep, spent her days teaching others that every night offers an opportunity to participate in the greatest art project in existence, the gradual transformation of human suffering into wisdom, fear into love, and nightmares into medicine for the world's pain. Here in the sacred chamber of deepest rest, as the story of the Night Weaver settles into your consciousness, like a lullaby becoming flesh, feel how this teaching might transform your own relationship with sleep and dreams. What if the rest you're about to enter is not just personal restoration, but cosmic service? What if your dreams tonight will contribute threads to tapestries of healing that can benefit anyone who needs what you're learning? Perhaps you've been approaching sleep as merely an escape from daily stress, not realizing that your unconscious mind is capable of profound, creative, and healing work. Maybe you've been afraid of your dreams, unaware that even the most difficult nocturnal experiences can be transformed into medicine. Or perhaps you've never considered that your personal healing journey might be part of something larger, a collective tapestry of wisdom, being woven from the transformed pain of countless souls. Let Morphia's wisdom work in your being, like threads, finding their perfect place in a cosmic pattern. Feel how any anxiety about sleep might transform into anticipation of sacred work. Notice how the day's accumulated stress might begin to seem like raw material for tonight's weaving, rather than burdens to be carried. Allow the recognition to dawn that your rest is not selfish, but generous, not escape, but engagement with the deepest currents of healing that flow through the universe. The Master's presence has become so subtle now that it feels more like a benevolent intention than a physical form. The Night Weaver's teaching prepares you for the deepest mystery of all. Comes a whisper that might be voice, or might be the chamber itself speaking. In our final story, you will discover the source from which all peace emerges, the original silence that gives birth to all sound, all rest, all awakening. Settle deeper now into the loom of consciousness and prepare to visit the echo chamber of original silence, where you will meet the peace you have always been. The sacred chamber seems to breathe itself into an even deeper dimension of stillness, as if reality itself is settling into layers of rest that extend far beyond physical form. Through the portal window, you can see into realms where sound and silence dance together in patterns so fundamental that they exist before the birth of worlds. The crystalline walls have become so transparent, they seem more like suggestions of boundary than actual barriers, allowing you to sense the infinite space that surrounds and pervades all existence. In this deepest level of the monastery's heart, where meditation becomes as natural as breathing, the Master's final teaching begins to emerge not as words, but as direct transmission. You can feel the story gathering itself from the very foundations of consciousness, rising like primordial wisdom from depths that have no bottom. This is the tale that underlies all other tales, the silence that makes all sound possible, the peace that allows all experience to unfold in its vast and welcoming embrace. Listen now with more than your ears, comes the transmission to the 9th teaching, the story of the echo chamber of original silence. This tale will return you to the source of all peace, the wellspring of all rest, the ground of being from which your very awareness emerges. In this final story before our journey's completion, discover that what you have been seeking through all these teachings has never been absent. It is the very consciousness through which you have been listening all along. In the hidden depths beneath the Himalayas, where the Earth's deepest chambers hold mysteries older than human memory, there existed a cave known only to those who had spent lifetimes searching for the source of perfect sound. This was the echo chamber of original silence, a natural cathedral carved by geological forces over millions of years into acoustics so perfect that every sound made within its walls would eventually return to the silence from which it came. Masters of sound healing would travel across continents hoping to find this legendary space, believing that whoever could create the perfect tone within its walls would unlock the secret of ultimate peace. Among these seekers was a devoted practitioner named Shabda, whose name meant sacred sound in the ancient Sanskrit tongue. For 20 years, she had studied with the greatest sound healers of her time, mastering instruments from every tradition, learning to create tones that could heal physical ailments, calm emotional disturbances, and even induce profound states of meditation. Her voice could carry listeners into realms of transcendence. Her singing bowls could restore harmony to the most chaotic minds, and her understanding of vibrational healing was recognized throughout the spiritual communities of Asia. Yet despite all her mastery, Shabda felt that something essential remained just beyond her reach. There must be one perfect sound, she often told her students, a tone so pure and complete that it contains all other sounds while transcending them. If I could find this ultimate vibration and learn to produce it, I could heal not just individuals, but the very fabric of reality itself. Somewhere in existence, there must be a sound that can restore all beings to their original peace. When Shabda first heard whispers of the echo chamber of original silence, she knew immediately that this was where her quest would reach its culmination. She spent 3 years preparing for the journey, studying ancient maps, consulting with hermit masters who claimed to have visited the chamber, and practicing advanced breathing techniques that would allow her to create sounds of unprecedented purity. She gathered the finest instruments from around the world, Tibetan bowls forged from 7 sacred metals, crystal instruments tuned to planetary frequencies, and a voice that had been refined through decades of dedicated practice. The journey to the hidden chamber required months of travel through terrain so remote that no modern maps showed its location. Guided only by cryptic directions passed down through generations of sound mystics, Shabda finally arrived at what appeared to be an ordinary rock face in a forgotten valley. But as she placed her palm against the stone and hummed a specific sequence of tones taught to her by an ancient master, the rock face began to resonate and slowly opened, revealing a passage that descended into the heart of the earth. The echo chamber itself defied every expectation Shabda had formed during her years of preparation. The vast space was roughly spherical, its walls formed from some kind of crystalline stone that seemed to absorb and reflect sound simultaneously. The acoustics were indeed perfect, but not in the way she had imagined. Every sound she made, every footstep, every breath, every whispered word was returned to her with such clarity and precision that she could hear layers and harmonics in her own voice that she had never perceived before. It was as if the chamber was teaching her about the true nature of sound by showing her exactly what she was creating. Shabda spent the first week in the chamber, experimenting with her various instruments, creating sounds of extraordinary beauty that echoed through the space in patterns of increasing complexity. The Tibetan bowls produced tones that seemed to hang in the air for minutes, building into harmonies that no single instrument should have been able to create. Her voice, amplified and clarified by the chamber's acoustics, reached ranges and qualities she had never achieved before. Each sound was returned to her as if the chamber itself was a master teacher, showing her the potential that had always existed within her abilities. But as days passed and Shabda continued to create increasingly perfect sounds, she began to notice something that challenged her fundamental assumptions about her quest. No matter how beautiful or healing the tones she produced, no matter how perfectly they resonated within the chamber's walls, they all eventually faded into the same profound silence. This silence wasn't merely the absence of sound, it was a living presence, a fullness so complete that it made every sound possible while remaining utterly untouched by any vibration. As Shabda sat in this silence between her sound experiments, she began to realize that what she had been seeking wasn't another sound, no matter how perfect. The silence that held all her sounds, that allowed them to arise and return home, was itself the source she had been trying to reach through sound. It wasn't empty space waiting to be filled with the right vibration. It was pregnant fullness that gave birth to every possible sound, while remaining forever beyond them all. On her 10th day in the chamber, Shabda finally understood why it was called the echo chamber of original silence. She had been thinking of echoes as sounds bouncing back from walls, but the true echo in this space was something far more profound. Every sound she made was an echo of the original silence, a temporary wave on the surface of an infinite ocean of peace. The silence wasn't responding to her sounds. Her sounds were responses to the silence, brief expressions of its boundless creativity. With this recognition, Shabda made a choice that would have seemed impossible to her former understanding. She put down all her instruments, closed her mouth, and simply listened to the silence that had been present all along. As she listened more deeply, she began to hear what could only be described as the sound of silence itself, not an absence, but a presence so full that it contained every possible sound in potential, while manifesting none. In that listening, Shabda discovered that the perfect sound she had been seeking didn't need to be created. It was already present as the consciousness that could hear all sounds. The ultimate healing vibration wasn't something she could produce with her voice or instruments. It was the awareness that could perceive all vibrations without being disturbed by any of them. She had been searching for the perfect sound when she herself was the perfect listener, the silent awareness in which all sounds arise and dissolve. As this understanding rippled through every level of Shabda's being, the chamber began to reveal its deepest secret. The walls themselves started to sing, not with audible sound, but with a frequency so fundamental that it existed before the creation of ears to hear it. This was the original silence made manifest, the source vibration from which all of creation emerges, and to which it eternally returns. Shabda realized she was sitting in the heart of existence itself, the womb of sound and silence, where they dance together in eternal unity. "I understand now," she whispered to the chamber, and her words seemed to be spoken by the silence itself. "I came here seeking the perfect sound, but I was already the perfect listener. I thought peace was something to be created through sound, but peace is what allows all sounds to exist. The healing I wanted to bring to the world through perfect vibration is already present as the consciousness that can hear all suffering and remain at peace." As Shabda spoke these words of recognition, something extraordinary occurred. The chamber filled with a sound that was not a sound, a vibration that could be felt rather than heard, experienced rather than perceived. It was as if the original silence had found its voice and was celebrating the return of one of its children to recognition of their true nature. In that moment, Shabda knew that she had found what she had been seeking, but not where she had expected to find it. The perfect sound was the silence of pure awareness, and she had been carrying it within her throughout her entire quest. When Shabda finally emerged from the echo chamber weeks later, she carried with her a gift more valuable than any technique or teaching she had previously mastered. She had discovered that the source of all healing sound is silence, and that the silence available to every being is already perfect and complete. Her work in the world transformed completely. Instead of creating sounds to bring people peace, she taught them to recognize the peace that allowed them to hear sounds. Students who worked with Shabda after her time in the chamber noticed that her presence alone seemed to create the same healing effects that had previously required elaborate sound ceremonies. She had learned to rest so completely in the original silence that others could feel it radiating from her like warmth from a fire. Her teaching became less about producing perfect sounds and more about recognizing the perfect listener that each person already was. The healing sound you seek, she would tell her students, is not something you need to create. It is the silence in which you already rest. Listen to that silence, not as an absence of sound, but as the presence of peace itself. Rest in that silence, not by trying to create it, but by recognizing it as what you are. Serve that silence by allowing it to live through you, healing others not through what you do, but through what you are. Shabda spent her remaining years establishing healing centers where people could learn to access the echo chamber that existed within their own consciousness. She taught them that meditation wasn't about stopping thoughts, but about recognizing the silence in which thoughts appear. She showed them that healing wasn't about fixing what was broken, but about resting in the wholeness that was never damaged. Most importantly, she helped them discover that the peace they sought through spiritual practice was already present as the awareness that could seek anything. The echo chamber of original silence continued to call to seekers from around the world, but those who found it after Shabda's time discovered something she had helped make possible. They found that the chamber existed not just in the hidden depths of the Himalayas, but in the deepest recesses of their own consciousness. The perfect acoustics that returned every sound to silence were available in the space of awareness that held all their experiences. The original silence that gave birth to all sounds was the very consciousness through which they experienced life. And so the echo chamber's greatest secret was revealed. It had never been a place to be found, but a recognition to be had. The original silence wasn't hidden in remote caves, but was present as the background of every moment, the space in which all experience unfolds. The perfect sound wasn't a vibration to be created, but the awareness that can hear all vibrations while being touched by none. The healing that seekers hoped to bring to the world through their practice was already radiating from the silence of their own true nature. Here in the sacred chamber of deepest rest, as Shabda's discovery settles into the very foundations of your being-like truth, finding its eternal home, feel how this final teaching completes the journey you have taken tonight. The echo chamber exists here, now, as the consciousness through which you have been listening to all these stories. Notice the silence that has been present between every word, holding every teaching, allowing every insight to emerge and dissolve. That silence isn't empty space. It's your own true nature, the awareness that makes all experience possible. The peace you have been moving toward through these stories was never absent. It is what allowed you to hear them, what holds them, what you are. Let this recognition work in your consciousness, like the original vibration, finding its own echo. Feel how all seeking might relax into being, all effort might dissolve into presence, all movement toward peace might resolve into the stillness you have never left. You are the echo chamber, the original silence, the perfect listener that all these teachings have been pointing toward. The Master's presence, now indistinguishable from your own deepest awareness, offers one final whisper before the journey reaches its completion. The teachings are complete, but the silence that contains them is eternal. Rest now in what you have always been, and let this recognition carry you into the deepest peace, where sleep and awakening reveal themselves as one consciousness appearing as two experiences. Yet even as these words settle into the infinite silence of your being, one final story emerges from the depths of compassion itself. This is not a teaching you need to receive, but a gift you are ready to give. Having recognized yourself as the echo chamber of original silence, you are now prepared to discover how that recognition expresses itself as service to all beings who still wander in the darkness of forgetting. Through the crystalline walls of the sacred chamber, a new vista appears, not another realm to visit, but a reflection of how consciousness appears when it knows itself fully. You see a lighthouse standing on a rocky coast, where the ocean of awareness meets the shores of individual experience. Its beam sweeps steadily across waters that contain every soul still searching for the peace you have recognized as your own true nature. This lighthouse is what you become when you remember what you are, a beacon of original silence, shining wordlessly into the night of human forgetting. Listen now to the final story. Comes a voice that might be your own deepest knowing speaking. The tale of the lighthouse keeper's final watch. This story completes your journey by showing how recognition of your true nature naturally expresses itself as compassion for all beings, how personal awakening becomes universal service, and how the end of seeking becomes the beginning of giving. On a remote island where storms from the deepest parts of the ocean came to test themselves against unshakable stone, there stood a lighthouse that had guided ships safely to harbor for over 2 centuries. Its keeper was an old man named Prakash, whose name meant light in the ancient language of his ancestors. For 40 years, he had tended this beacon with a devotion that bordered on the sacred, never missing a single night of keeping the light burning bright. His entire life had become a meditation on service, each evening's lighting of the great lamp, a ritual of dedication to the safety of travelers he would never meet. Prakash had chosen the lighthouse keeper's life after a youth spent in restless wandering. He had searched the world for meaning, traveled to holy places seeking enlightenment, studied with teachers who promised to reveal the secrets of existence. But it was only when he accepted the simple responsibility of keeping a light burning through the night that he found the peace that had eluded him in all his seeking. In the rhythmic routine of maintaining the beacon, in the nightly vigil that served ships he might never see, he discovered that service itself was a form of meditation that required no understanding, only presence. As Prakash aged and his hair turned the color of sea foam, younger men from the mainland began to express concern about his ability to continue his demanding work. "You have served faithfully for 4 decades, the harbor authorities told him during one of their periodic visits. It's time to retire, to let someone younger take over this responsibility. You've earned your rest." But the thought of leaving his post filled Prakash with a deep unease that he couldn't articulate. What will happen to the ships that depend on this light? He asked the officials. How can I be sure that someone else will tend it with the same dedication? There are nights when the storms are so fierce that only someone who truly understands the responsibility would keep the light burning. What if I leave and the light fails when it's needed most? The harbour master, a practical man who had grown fond of the old keeper over the years, tried to reassure him. Prakash, we will find someone reliable. The light will continue to shine. You cannot carry this responsibility forever. At some point, you must trust that the service you have given has been enough. But Prakash's attachment to his role went deeper than mere duty. Over 4 decades of tending the lighthouse, his identity had become completely intertwined with his service. He was not just someone who kept a light burning. He was the keeper, the guardian, the one upon whom countless lives depended. The thought of stepping away from this responsibility felt like stepping away from himself, like extinguishing not just the lighthouse beam, but his very reason for existence. As months passed and pressure mounted for him to retire, Prakash found himself clinging ever more tightly to his duties. He began to work longer hours, checking and rechecking the lighthouse mechanisms, polishing the great lens until it gleamed like a captured star. He would stand at his post during the day as well as the night, watching the horizon for ships that might need guidance, afraid that if he relaxed his vigilance for even a moment, tragedy might strike. His service, which had once been a flowing meditation, became a desperate grasping, a fearful holding on to what he thought gave his life meaning. One evening, as Prakash climbed the winding stairs to light the great lamp for what he feared might be one of his final times, he found waiting for him in the lighthouse room a figure he had never seen before. It was an elderly woman with eyes that reflected the same depth as the ocean itself, dressed in simple clothes that seemed to shimmer with their own inner light. She stood beside the great lens as if she had every right to be there, gazing out at the darkening sea with a calm that immediately stilled something in Prakash's anxious heart. "Who are you?" Prakash asked, though something in her presence made the question feel unnecessary. "How did you get up here? This is a restricted area." The woman turned to him with a smile that held 40 years of understanding. "I am Dipti," she said, her name meaning radiance, in the same ancient language as his own. "I have come to show you something that you have forgotten in all your faithful service." Before Prakash could respond, Dipti gestured toward the lighthouse lens. "Tell me, devoted keeper," she said gently, "when you light this beacon each night, where does the light come from?" Prakash looked puzzled. "From the lamp, of course. From the oil that burns, the flame that ignites, the mechanisms I maintain." "And if the lamp breaks?" Dipti asked. "If the oil runs out? If the mechanisms fail? Does the light cease to exist?" "Well, no," Prakash admitted. "Light itself continues to exist. The sun will rise, stars will shine, fires will burn elsewhere. But this particular light, the one that guides ships to safety, would be gone." Dipti nodded with the patience of someone who had guided many souls through this same recognition. "And yet," she said, "for 40 years, what you have really been tending is not this particular lamp, but light itself. What you have been serving is not this specific beacon, but the principle of guidance that appears wherever it is needed. You have confused the lamp with the light, the form with the essence, the role with the reality." As Dipti spoke, something began to shift in Prakash's understanding. "Are you saying," he asked slowly, "that my service isn't really about this lighthouse?" "Your service," Dipti replied, "has always been about love expressing itself as guidance. The lighthouse was simply the form that love took through you. But love itself doesn't depend on any particular form. It will find whatever vehicle is available to serve the needs of beings in darkness. Your 4 decades of faithful tending have not been preparation for keeping a lamp burning. They have been preparation for recognizing yourself as the light that needs no lamp." Dipti reached out and touched the great lens, and as she did, it began to glow with a radiance that had nothing to do with the oil lamp mechanism. The light that emerged was warm and alive, pulsing with the same rhythm as Prakash's heartbeat. "This is the light you have always been serving," she said. "Not the mechanical beacon, but the love that seeks to guide all beings to safety. And this light doesn't depend on your personal effort to keep it burning. It burns by its own nature, requiring only your willingness to let it shine through you." As Prakash watched the lighthouse lens glowing with this inner radiance, he began to understand what his decades of service had really been about. All those nights of faithful tending had been preparing him to recognize that he was not separate from the light he served. His devotion to keeping the beacon burning had been a form of spiritual practice that had gradually dissolved the boundaries between server and served, between the keeper and the light. He had spent 40 years learning to be a transparent vessel for something greater than his individual will. "But what about my responsibility?" Prakash asked, his voice now carrying wonder rather than anxiety. "What about the ships that need guidance?" "The light that you are will continue to serve," Dipti assured him. "But it is no longer limited to this one lighthouse, this one form. Everywhere you go, everyone you meet will be touched by the same loving guidance that has poured through this beacon for 40 years. Your service continues, but it is no longer confined to a single location or a single role. You have become what you were always serving, a light in the darkness, a beacon of peace in a world of confusion." As this recognition dawned fully in Prakash's awareness, the lighthouse itself began to transform. The mechanical structures remained, but they were now infused with the same living light that glowed from the lens. The entire building had become transparent to the light it housed, no longer a separate structure containing illumination, but a manifestation of illumination itself. And Prakash understood that this had always been true. He had simply been too focused on the mechanisms to see the miracle. "Your final watch," Dipti said as the dawn began to break over the ocean, "is the recognition that there is no final watch. The light that guided ships through your lighthouse will continue to guide all beings through your very presence in the world. You are not retiring from service. You are graduating into a service that knows no boundaries. When the harbor authorities arrived later that morning to discuss Prakash's retirement, they found him sitting peacefully in the lighthouse garden, his face radiant with a contentment they had never seen before. "I am ready," he told them simply. "The light will continue to shine, not because of what I do, but because of what it is. And I will continue to serve, not because I must, but because service is what love looks like when it knows itself." Prakash's successor was amazed to discover that the lighthouse seemed to run itself with unusual smoothness. The mechanisms required less maintenance than expected, the lens stayed remarkably clean, and the light seemed to burn with an intensity that exceeded its technical specifications. Sailors reported that the beacon appeared brighter and more welcoming than ever before, as if the lighthouse itself had learned something about its true purpose. As for Prakash, he spent his remaining years traveling between coastal communities, offering guidance to lighthouse keepers and harbor workers, teaching them that their service was a form of meditation, their vigilance, a type of prayer. But more than his words, it was his presence that taught, the unmistakable radiance of someone who had discovered that the light they served was not separate from their own true nature. Wherever he went, people found themselves naturally inspired to serve with greater devotion, not from duty, but from the recognition that service is how love expresses itself in the world. And the lighthouse continued to guide ships safely to harbor, no longer dependent on any individual keeper, but sustained by the collective love of all who served its purpose. It had become what every true lighthouse is meant to be, not a monument to individual effort, but a manifestation of the eternal light that shines wherever beings are willing to serve something greater than themselves. Here in the sacred chamber of deepest rest, as Prakash's final recognition completes the circle of teachings you have received tonight, feel how his discovery mirrors your own journey through these stories. You began seeking peace, wisdom, and understanding, but what you have found is that you are the awareness in which all peace, wisdom, and understanding appear. Like Prakash discovering that he was not separate from the light he served, you are recognizing that you are not separate from the consciousness you have been exploring. The monastery you have journeyed through exists within your own awareness. The master who has guided you is your own deepest wisdom. The peace you have been moving toward has been the very consciousness through which you have been moving. And now, like the lighthouse keeper graduating into boundless service, your journey into deeper understanding becomes a natural expression of compassion for all beings still searching for what you have recognized. Your rest tonight will be more than personal restoration. It will be a beacon of peace radiating into the collective unconscious, a lighthouse of consciousness, shining for all who still wander in the darkness of forgetting their true nature. Let this final recognition settle into your being, like light finding its perfect reflection. You are both the seeker and the sought, the server and the served, the beacon and the light itself. In recognizing this, your spiritual journey doesn't end. It transforms from seeking to being, from effort to effortlessness, from personal practice to universal service. The 10 teachings are complete, but their essence lives on as your own awakened presence in the world. Rest now in this recognition, and let your sleep be both the deepest rest and the most profound service. a living demonstration that the peace all beings seek is available here, now, as the very consciousness through which they search. As the final story settles into the infinite silence of your being, the sacred chamber begins to reveal its ultimate secret. The crystalline walls slowly fade, not into darkness, but into the recognition that they were never separate from the consciousness observing them. The portal window expands until it encompasses everything, showing you that all the realms you visited tonight exist within the vast space of your own awareness. The Master's presence, which has grown more subtle with each teaching, now completes its transformation. You understand with perfect clarity that this wise guide was never separate from your own deepest knowing. Every word of wisdom, every gentle guidance, every moment of profound teaching has been your own consciousness speaking to itself, remembering what it has always known. The monastery itself begins to dissolve, like morning mist touched by dawn. The halls you walked, the gardens you explored, the chambers where you received these transformative teachings, all of it resolves back into the awareness that dreamed it into being. You see now that the Midnight Monastery was never a place you traveled to, but a recognition you traveled through. It exists eternally within you, accessible whenever you rest in the silence of your own true nature. As this recognition completes itself, you find yourself exactly where you began this journey, resting comfortably, held by whatever supports you. But you are not the same consciousness that started this pilgrimage. You have awakened within the dream of seeking to the reality of being. The peace you traveled so far to find was never absent. It is what you are, have always been, and will always be. Your breathing has become the rhythm of the universe itself. Your heartbeat drums the ancient song that calls all beings home to themselves. As sleep approaches, it comes not as unconsciousness, but as conscious rest in your own infinite nature. Every dream that visits you tonight will be a teaching, every moment of rest a prayer, every breath a blessing for all who still search for the peace you have remembered. From Moonmine Temple, we offer this final gift. May your sleep be profound and transformative. May you rest as the light that needs no keeping, the peace that requires no seeking, the love that knows no boundaries. And may you awaken refreshed not just in body and mind, but in the recognition of who you truly are, the very consciousness in which all experience unfolds, the eternal awareness that is the source and destination of every spiritual journey. The Midnight Monastery's gates remain forever open within you. Return whenever you need to remember what this night has revealed. You are the teacher you sought, the peace you needed, the love you desired. Rest now in this truth and let it carry you into the deepest sleep and the brightest dawn.